Hello, good morning guys, and welcome to the live stream, Live in the Air Era, and what is your personal role as the world changes over the next few years. So we're doing things a little bit different. I know that some of you who are logging in right now, I can see lots of people like just coming in and joining us. So just come in and grab a morning coffee or something. In fact, we're going to do things quite a bit differently from my usual webinars. Because I know some of you have been following us since we began doing these online events from as early as the early part of 2020. I know some of you were even, before COVID hit us, you were even in the audience when I did the first large event, which was Dawn of the New Millennium, back in January 2020. So in the past, we focused a lot on these predictions. People wanted to know, okay, exactly what was going to happen. And we were very focused on events. So people wanted to know, oh, from this date onwards, that this new development is going to show up in whatever country. So that was useful. It was fun, and I know a lot of the business owners, they really appreciated knowing what was going to. Even like looking at things like COVID numbers, because you could actually extrapolate and see how policies would change along the way. But I think it didn't answer some of the more personal type questions where people wanted to know, okay, so based on the kind of industry that I'm in, how do we get people to change mindsets? How do we see how our careers or the decisions that we're making right now, does it really give you that strong feeling that you are prepared for the changes that are coming? So this is why, based on all the emails and the messages that we've gotten over the last few, I was going to say months, but I realize it's years now, that a lot of people are more concerned about what is my role. Because maybe things are happening in India or Vietnam or wherever it is, but right now here I have a job, it's in a corporate environment, and you become very conscious that mindsets are not moving. So that's what we're going to focus on this time around, and so that's why today is, I've called it a live stream. It's not really a webinar. And along the way, there will be a lot of opportunities for you to express your opinions on some of the topics that we're bringing up. So we want to hear examples. We want to hear, there'll be polls so that you can indicate like, where are you? And we also get to see where everyone else stands on what we expect to be happening in the air era. Okay, so without further ado, I'm just going to get started with my slides. And so some of the questions that we've gotten over this time is things like, the world has changed so rapidly. So what approaches can help not just ourselves, but helping other people adjust? One thing that's very heartening is that we do get a lot of leaders, people who are in leadership positions in your careers, and then realizing that whether you are talking about unemployment, laying people off, or even getting people to work in new ways. And I'm not just talking about going online or going on cloud, that especially you have a younger generation of people who are questioning the way organizations are working and how do we deal with that. So people are also asking, what does a career change even mean in this era? Does it mean that we are all going to be big data analysts, and does it mean that the hairdressers and what do the bus drivers do? Okay, so that's what we're going to address. And I think also, especially for those of us, if you're like me and you're like 30 and above, and if you might be asking things like, if I grew up in the Earth era, we were all told when we were much younger, go get a good job and make some money, have lots of investments, buy a house. And so how do you then adopt the mindset and the priorities of the air era? So I will go into very practical tips, actual things that we can do right now in 2022, as many of you are possibly working on, or even up to now still making your New Year's resolutions, that perhaps what I'm going to suggest is that the activities that you're working on in 2022 might be very different from the kind of resolutions and activities that you were doing in years past, right? So if I may just sort of introduce myself a little bit, because I know quite a lot of the people watching might be new to our stuff. This might be your very first webinar. So I'm what is most commonly known as an astrologer. But I think I've done things a little bit different from most astrologers. I don't sort of sit in a corner and go, come and read your chart. So not quite how we do things. So I've been featured twice in the New York Times Style magazine. And I'm usually interviewed on things like millennials, or why is it that companies need to grapple with this new generation of people, and what do they want? I've been featured also on Rice Media. They wanted to know, what astrology can predict for the post-pandemic future. I was also featured on Asia1.com, SingaporeWomansWeekly.com about my predictions, mostly predictions. But I've also done some work for corporates, like Facebook, for example. It was very interested in astrology and how people react to things online. I've been brought in to do forecasts for large MNCs. So this event that I did, a lot of these guys are directors from large companies like your Lazadas, the Singapore Airlines, the hospitals, the banks. And a lot of these companies were very interested in what they could expect, not just in 2021, but in the years to come. Whether it's dealing with their employees or the kind of world events that can impact the products and the processes of what they are doing. And of course, for everyone else who have been following my webinars, they are nicknamed the tsunami webinars for all those pictures of like gigantic waves and all. And so of course, I think we've all felt it. In terms of it may not be something that sort of came and punched you in the face, but I think it's the little changes that we see about how people interact and the expectations that we now have of the various areas of our life. And of course, in the webinars are just one of the things that I do. I consider it a bit of a public service. But in our day jobs, I run 𝗟𝗲𝘁'𝘀 Academy. It's where we teach regular people how to read charts and how to apply astrological concepts and understanding into the way we choose jobs, the way we work with our team members, and how we understand the kind of struggles that people are facing in their everyday lives. So for me, at least, I don't think I kind of started this because I love astrology, but it came from a very strong belief, which I think has been shining through all the previous webinars, that when we look at the human population, especially during the Earth era, it was very common for us to see that people are just living in all these pre-packaged boxes. That means when you were born, at some point you were expected to go to school. And at some point, they determined whether you were good enough to go and get yourself a fancy degree. And then at some point you decided, okay, you need to get a job and it's measured by, do you earn a minimum amount of money? And then at some point you're expected to get married and you're expected to buy a house. And I think the story became quite copy and paste for every single person. It was the same thing. And I don't think people could see out of the box. And I don't think a lot of people sort of really thought about, had the situation been different, if the expectations had been different, might you have chosen a slightly different life? So it's like when we start to put this onto each person, when we start to understand that each person has got certain abilities, who are the people who can really understand the girl who's crying in the toilet cubicle, and who's the one who has the ability to put a PowerPoint slide together with great pictures and is able to sort of share their ideas, even in a stuffy corporate environment, and who can tell a story much better than everyone else. And I don't think these are the skills and abilities that have gotten a lot of attention in the Earth era. And what we have started to notice is that given the wider range of options that are available to people right now with the internet and various more developments that are coming up, it's easier for people to be more self-expressive. And suddenly now it makes more sense to get into who are you and what would you like to do versus what your parents or what society thought that was best for you to do, so that people don't just monkey see, monkey do, like, oh, my friend did this and I was very successful, so I want to go do it too, until you realize it's not for you. And what you do may not be for other people, right? So that it comes from a belief like that. And so over the years, we've sort of like, it's been a great tool for rallying people, getting people to sort of reflect on their lives. We've built great relationships with our students over the years. Of course, things have it expanded very much in the last few years. So this was the dawn of the new millennium, an event that we did with a few hundred people in the audience. And after that, when we went online, it got much, much, much bigger. But even up to now, I would say that our students, right now, our students come from more than 28 countries, from really far-flung places like even Switzerland, France, Brazil, and many, many others. But what is common, no matter where they come from or what color their skin is that all our students want to move their lives in a new direction. It's an awareness that where we are right now is not fully where they want to be. They also seek more fulfilling and meaningful careers. It's not about working less per se. In fact, what I found that's very heartening is that a lot of my students actually want to do more. But it's more about doing more in a specific area that they care about. And there aren't afraid to dig deep into personal psychologies and motivations. And really, that's the main thing that astrology is good for. Most people think it's predictions, but it's really for this. And also, a lot of my students want to use astrological tools, not just for themselves, but to promote well-being for others. I've lost count of the number of my students who have come back to say that we've used these tools in the workplace, we've profiled our team members, and we realized why some people are apparently incompetent or unable to do a job, or that why some people didn't get along with each other. And somehow knowing where the problem came from meant that people can find a logical solution to start finding ways to work with each other. So it's for me, this is a very rewarding, very fulfilling career. No regrets at all, leaving my corporate job to do this. Okay, so now moving into today's live stream, because we want to cover topics that make sense for people, and to cover what we thought that the prediction webinars didn't always address. So we actually sent out a survey to our audience with 4 very simple questions. So I thought you might like to see the results of the survey. So we captured this when we had 106 responses. So it seemed that majority of the people were in their 30s and in their 20s. So what you see reflected here are, I would say, these are the millennials. So we did get some of the Gen X responses from people who are between 40 to 49. So that made up about 27, 30% of the people who responded. So thank you to the people who took the time out to answer our questions. And we also asked them, what topics are you interested in? So we gave them a list of stuff that we've been asked about, and we had a clear winner. So what everybody, in fact, 2/3 of the responses thought that they wanted to know more about skills learning. And some people even, they added on to their answers by asking about specific careers and where certain industries were going to go. So I'm going to talk a lot about that today. And we also have, in second place, in fact, second and third place, you see about half the respondents were very interested in human profiling and spirituality. So obviously, if they're responding to an astrologer's questionnaire, then it's not surprising to know that lots of people are interested in spirituality. But what I thought was interesting is the human profiling, that we are starting to realize that the individual and what the individual is capable and natural for them to do is much more important for us now, rather than can you tell me which job is going to make money? Okay, so that's a very old Earth era conversation. And of course, there are also other topics that have gotten quite some interest. Things like a bit of real estate, people interested in how to reorganize our work teams in the air era. And also, I think because we have some younger respondents, a lot of people were interested in how dating was going to be like in the air era. So obviously, I won't be able to cover everything. It's a lot of topics, but we're going to touch on a little or most of all of these things in today's live stream. Okay, so the first thing is, now if you're new to these webinars, some of you might be wondering, so what exactly is this air era? And I know that, that even the people who have watched some of the previous events have even written in to us to say that, okay, can you be clearer about what this air era is, or what is considered air era and what is not? So I'm going to spend the first half of this live stream to flesh it out, so that everyone is absolutely clear about how do you determine if something is air era or not. Okay, so I'll try my best to give you quite clear parameters for that. But later on in the second half is when we're going to start to look at how we can apply these concepts this year, right now, into your workplace and how you make your decisions. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about what exactly is this air era. Okay, so some of you have seen this timeline before. I modified it a bit so that we extended it so we can see a bigger picture. Yeah. So as always, I'm going to start my little story at a random time, and I'm going to start it in the year 1742. So astrologically, something occurs in the sky every about 20 years. So the official term is a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. So it basically means the planet Jupiter and Saturn will meet each other in the sky, and this happens every 20 years. So every time they meet, this conjunction usually is in a sign. So in this case, in 1742, the sign is Leo. Now I've colored it red color because Leo, as an astrological sign, is in the element of fire. So that's why it is red color. So then every 20 years they will meet. So the 20 years later, they met in Aries. It's a different sign, but it is still a fire element. So that's why I still colored it red. So as you can see, it went on red for a while. So just in case you thought that this started in 1742, it didn't lah. So basically it was red for a period of about 100 over years. So every 20 years within that period, it was red color, because that is what is known as the fire era. So all the people who lived at that time made their decisions based on fire-based priorities, which I will flesh out for you later. So something occurred later, in the very next one, in 1802, suddenly you see a different color. And it's this earth-looking color, because Virgo is an earth sign. So this is where, if you look into history, that's around the time that the Industrial Revolution kind of began. So people began working with machinery, and it became normal for people to go and get a job in that sense. Like you didn't just work in a cottage industry. It was normal to go and work for a salary, and it was a rising trend at the time. The funny thing is, 20 years later in 1821, it reverted back to the fire era. So that was a period where people sort of took like a pinky toe into the new era, and then after that they reverted and did things the old way. So that happened for a while, which is one of the reasons why even in those days, if you go back and look at very old literature, when the machinery first started coming up, everyone was saying that this is going to be a new world. But then it took a while. So it was like 20 years, 30 years, and somehow people were thinking, okay, but we are still long live the Queen, right? And if you recall, for us, those of us who live in Singapore, in 1819 was when Sir Stamford Raffles came to Singapore. So yes, although it was a corporate thing, right? They came and did a deal with Singapore. They wanted to trade and work with our port. But at the same time, there was still a whole sense of like, we are here to plant the British flag on your land. And you had a strong feeling that this idea of serving the Queen was still a very big priority for people at the time. So this is why the fire era was still very present. And after that, from 1842, now this year is very important, because from 1842 onwards, the fire era ended. And from this moment on, it was all earth. So that was pretty crazy. Okay, so then it went on for about 100 over years. And if we look into our history, that's when we invented things like the telegraph, the railways, steamships, even things like the aeroplane. Then after the telegraph came the telephone, and then we had movies, and then after that there was TV, there was radio, and all of that stuff. So this was the Earth era, and it totally changed the world. Suddenly no one cares about like royalty and kings and queens, and it was very normal to move to a city, get a job, get a salary, get an education, and that became the norm. And this was the Earth era. It's the era of work and salary and money. And then after that, something happened though in 1981. Now, those of you who were alive in the 1981, you can show some responses, give me some emoticons and stuff. Now, something happened in 1981 when this was the first sneak preview of the air era. So what most of us will recall in the 80s, okay, I wasn't born in 1981, but I was born a little bit after, but we definitely recall getting computers in our homes. First, it started with the shops, and you would go to a shop and there would be a cash register, which was like, hey, computers have shown up. And after that, you found that boys didn't want to climb trees anymore. They wanted to sit at home and like press their little consoles that were connected to the TVs. Super Mario Brothers, Pac-Man, Space Invaders. And after that, as we got a bit older, most of us got personal computers in our homes. So the air era was when the first inkling of this idea of the digital revolution started to show the early stages. We also had things like MIRC. Who remembers that? MIRC, BitTorrent, like we were going online, just downloading like movies and songs for free at the time, all pirates, right? And those were the days where it really took like an entire week just to download one movie. You know, the internet connection was so slow in those days. And then we had ICQ and various other things like Friendster at the time, if you still remember, MySpace and all that, you know. So 1981. But similarly to the pattern that we saw earlier, it reverted back to the Earth era in the year 2000. Now, most of us, you probably alive at the time. So that one, I think everyone remembers. And it became a lot less about the like internet is cool, or everybody was going on MIRC to be experimental. It kind of stopped being about connections, and it stopped being about technology. Because when you talk about things like Facebook, people became less connected about how many friends you had and more interested in how much was Facebook going to IPO for. Basically, the dollars, the ka-ching came back into the story. And we also had people who they didn't just want to build a website, they wanted to build an e-commerce website. So basically, I want to have a link somewhere where somebody's going to buy a product. Okay, so that's what happened to the internet. Even as you talk about Apple, you know, when Apple was run by Steve Jobs, it was about innovation. Every year, a product would come out, like iPod. This idea of 10,000 songs in your pocket, it blew people's minds. And suddenly, that was around the time that Steve Jobs got sick, and then he wasn't running the company anymore. And once the Earth era showed up, I don't know who has noticed that who has noticed that Apple is no longer about innovation. It's about creating new phones so that you got stuff to buy, and the only thing that they give you is an extra camera and a bigger screen. So there's no more innovation. Everything that was innovated happened when Jobs was still alive and when the Air era was still around. So what we saw during the Earth era was that this idea of doing things for digital improvement kind of took a backstage, and what became much more important was the ROI. How much money were we going to make out of it? Who cares what Facebook does as long as their stock price goes up and then I become rich? So that was the Earth era. But you see, what got me to start this entire series of Air era webinars is because I realized that a lot of people are going to need a bit of adjustment. Because in 2020, that happened in December 21st of December 2020, was when the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction occurred again. And this time around, it was in Aquarius. So we bring back the light blue color again, because it's the Air era. Now, why this is so important is that just like what happened in 1842, things change. And after that, nobody is interested in the Earth era anymore, because after this, it's just a series of air. And that means we are never, ever going back to that old ka-ching world anymore. So this is the part that confuses a lot of people. Because when you look around you, the money conversation is alive and well. And that's and some things are still, but I think a lot of people are starting to see that the shift has begun. Like the conversations that people have in the office, suddenly we are maybe thinking of like people don't have to work so hard, and maybe it's a bit more important to people that people get some rest, and that rather than to have to squeeze every dollar out of every project that they do, people start to ask like, okay, can we take some of that time out to do things that have a bit more social benefit for all the people involved, whether you're an employee or you're the customer. So this is starting to shift now, especially as the people who were what we call Air era people. So if you were born after 1981, it's what is commonly known as the millennials. And between 81 to 2000 was kind of, loosely speaking, is when the millennials were. And then the people who were born after the year 2000, loosely speaking, are your Gen Z. Now, what this means is that as the workforce, a lot of the Earth era people they're retiring themselves one by one. And then you see a lot more of these Air era people showing up. And that's why things are going to shift extremely rapidly from here onwards, because we are officially already in the Air era, and Earth is never coming back, at least not for another 1,000 years, and nobody's going to be alive at the time. So of course, in some of the comments that I've gotten from people is that, hey, May, why you always talk about fire, earth, and air? How about water? Then okay, fine. So I'm just going to put it in, okay, but I'm not going to take any questions about the water era. So the water era is only going to show its sneak preview in the year 2159. Nobody alive now will be alive at that time. So I would rather we be practical and ask questions about the air era than go and think too much about the water. Okay, so let's just make sure humanity is still around at the time, rather than go and be concerned about random hypothetical things. Yeah. So that's and after that, the same pattern occurs. You get a sneak preview, it comes back to the air era, and life goes on. So this pattern has been around in the human consciousness for a long time. And I know this because I actually went and did the calculations for a really long period of time. So this is why for us, what's important is to realize that, I don't know about you, but I think I'm quite lucky to be born at this time to really see this transition of one era to another. And I think it's very exciting. Okay, so let me know what you think. Yeah. So I mean, as I've been doing these webinars, most people are very concerned about your personal lives. So maybe you're not so concerned about what's happening in other countries or other industries, but I get questions like things like, so I'm in construction, And does this mean construction is Earth era? Then what does this mean for me and my career? Am I going to die? Are we all going to lose our jobs? And we also have people asking, okay, if I'm doing e-commerce, that's good, right? I mean, that's digital, it's online. Does it mean I'm safe and I'm air era? And then there are also people, in fact, one respondent for my survey actually asked that if I do financial services, I do mortgages and investment broking, but if I do it online, means it's air era, is it? So that's something that I thought in this live stream I will be able to address for these kind of questions. So I think at this point I'm going to explain that there is something known as a universal concept, which is very different from what we call the elemental manifestation. So when we talk about elements, means it's like, is it fire era, is it earth era, is it air era? So that's the element part. So what is the difference between the two? Okay, so this is for, when I explain this, then you will know what does it mean when we say something is earth or air, okay? So let me give you examples of universal concepts. So it's things like work, transport, homes, families, food, deaths, births and children, dating and marriages, money, social class, and all of these things. Okay, so I'm just going to click through. Now, when you look at this entire list of things, you can pick anything. Medical care, you can pick games, music, theater, communities. Shakespeare, the people who lived at the Shakespearean era, they had births and children, always had. In ancient Greece had construction. They were building buildings, right? And the Mayans had games and theater and music and fashion. I assure you they did, and they also had fashion. So the thing is, when we talk about a universal concept, it means that these things will always be present. There is no such thing as long as humans are alive, all of these things are there. As far as I know, going to the toilet, that has been a thing for humans since the beginning of time. So in terms of, if you were to ask me things like, is construction earth era, i.e., does it mean that in the air era, all construction was stopped and nobody will build anything anymore? We all know that that's not true. Okay, so that means it will exist in one form or another. Now, the difference when we talk about the element, whether something is earth, fire, or air, it's, for example, when we talk about music, in the fire era, Mozart, you got Mozart, you had Beethoven, and then in the earth era, you had David Bowie, you had ABBA, you had the Bee Gees, and of course now in the air era, you get a very different type of music altogether. So music exists, it's just the type of music that changes. Okay, so just so everyone is super clear about this concept. So that means in this live stream, right, what we really want to cover is that how then will some of these concepts change? So things like work will still exist, but if you are still thinking about working in the earth era thing, then increasingly you're going to find that your ideas become more and more old-fashioned until they don't work anymore. Okay, so one thing I love about astrology is that when we look at the universal concepts, we can actually map this onto an astrological chart. So each of all these universal concepts, they belong somewhere on that chart. So when we talk about things like marriages, we talk about spirituality or like homes, families, that it's the astrological chart is timeless in the sense that we can look at the chart of Leonardo da Vinci, and we can look at the chart of Queen Elizabeth I, the old 1600 Queen Elizabeth. All these things existed in their lives, and how they experience things is the same as long as you're a human being, just that maybe they didn't have Instagram and Twitter but they would have had ways of communicating with their communities, for example. So that's what I personally really love about astrology. But let's go back into this universal concept. And I'm going to use a few examples to illustrate to us how we can apply this as we make our plans for the air era. So let's start with something very universal, like work. It has existed since forever, right? And once you add in the element, so let's look at the fire era. How did work exist in the fire era? It's so these are pictures of like glass blowers and some of the early textile manufacturers. Now, a lot of the people at the time worked in what we call cottage industries. And they didn't really have a boss per se. Most of the time, their boss was sort of like a feudal lord. There was a sir and a lady, and you would just work for them. That's in Europe and in the Western world. And even in China and places like India, it kind of was like that. You had a lord of some sort, and then everybody in that whole area just worked for their mini king in that sense. So that's how the fire era worked. So I'm going to show you some of these keywords. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are the fire signs. And when you put them together, it gives you a sense of work and what is it characterized by. So if you look into history, that was when art and culture it flourished. Like I said, we had Mozart and Beethoven at the time. In fact, even Shakespeare and a lot of our famous writers, the ones that we've been reading for 18th century, 19th century, 17th and 18th century literature were all from that period of time. It was very feasible to be a philosopher in those days. It was an okay profession. And of course, a lot of the activities was designed to show loyalty to the king and the queen. So at the time, if you think about what constitutes a good job, if you had a job and then your mother was very proud of you, you can see here it's like as long as it was like you demonstrated your physical abilities and that you were going to win a fight, you're going to be a soldier and you're going to fight some Frenchmen and win. So that was the point of it. Now, I also thought that visually, another way I could describe this is if I was an architect who existed in the fire era, I would build buildings that was a lot more flamboyant. I want buildings that are grand, it's very expressive, and it shows even in the pictures of the buildings that still stand today. If a building is built in the fire era, that's what it looks like. It's colorful. It has a lot of attention has been paid to all these artistic detail, which we think are awesome now. But you know how in the Earth era, we wouldn't bother with all of these things. Because if you look at all these beautiful carvings and decorations on the building, if you were the one who had to pay for this building today, you'd be like, yeah, so what's the ROI on those decorations? And that's why all the decorations disappeared, isn't it? But the priorities were very different in those days. Okay, so that's the fire era. So of course, then once we move into our era, which was the this work era in the Earth. So if you look at how did people work? So these are black and white pictures from the 1930s, the 1940s, right in the middle of this Earth era thing. And suddenly you realize no one gives a damn about art and culture. There is no flamboyance. Nobody is working for the king or the queen. And sure as hell, nobody's interested in magic and wonder anymore. Right? So there's a lot of this copy and paste. It was all about scale. People learn to work with machines, and one worker looks exactly like another worker. Like there's no individualism, and the whole idea is within a work day, how many products can you produce? How many papers can you type? And it was all that is like a machine. It gets people sort of working like this. And if I were to show you some of the keywords that come with the Earth era, so Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn are the Earth words, and then you see suddenly our priorities change. So it's more like money and profit was number one. Economies of scale. The idea is to build it as big as possible so that we reduce our costs, cut costs. The idea is ROI, and then you want to maximize utility. So when people say things like, oh, I'm going to hire an employee, can you show me how to get the best out of my employee? And all you can think about, I got this from Simon Sinek, by the way, and it's like he had this idea of a towel, and then you just squeeze like the maximum out of your employee. And I think a lot of us know how that feels, right? So it's standardization. The whole idea is that you don't want to have personalization because personalization costs money. If you mass produce, it's cheaper and you make more money that way. And in the end, people were not interested in your physical abilities. What they were more interested in, it was your financial ability. You were valued based on how much money or how much you could produce in terms of material value. So of course, if I was an architect, so architects exist throughout history because construction exists, right? So if I was an architect in the Earth era, I wouldn't propose carvings anymore. What we wanted was to have buildings where it is the cheapest to build, and we can squeeze as many people and as many activities into the building as possible. So which is why in the Earth era, our buildings change. So we got all these square, not very beautiful buildings, and they were all like these blocks of whichever it was. Okay, so of course, some people may be saying, hey, May, how come you're not featuring all those beautiful glass and chrome buildings that we have? So guys, those are not Earth era. Those are built after 1981, which means that they are hybrid. So they are earth and air, which is why the transparent glass windows started showing up after 1981. But these buildings that I'm showing you were pure Earth era buildings. Okay, so that we start to see some of the patterns that show up. Okay, so the next one is air era. And I know people are like, hey, May, we are just waiting for you to show us like what the air era work is going to look like. So at this point, I need to disclaimer a bit, okay? Because if you look at the red arrow, which I've just put on the screen, Now, this actually shows us where we are on that timeline. The date now is 8th of Jan 2022. So we are just entering past that 2020 space, right? So that means we still have the entire air era ahead of us. So just so that we recognize that we are the early version of the air era. Everything that we do now is the early version. Just like if the equivalent would be if you existed in 1844, which is 2 years into the Earth era. Now, I think it's quite safe to say that if you existed, if we were doing this live stream in 1844, you might not be able to visualize what a telegraph looks like. And you wouldn't be able to imagine that one day there will be aeroplanes, or that there will be refrigerators and microwave ovens, and that you could drive your car to a movie drive-in. So there were a lot of things that happened in the Earth era that is unthinkable in 1844. So just to hammer the point in, right? These pictures, I went on Google and I typed 1844, and essentially all these pictures came up. So this is what the world looked like in 1844. It was very different from the Earth era that we came to know after. Okay, so this disclaimer is simply to say that right now, what I can imagine, I may be an astrologer, but it's not like I know what technology is going to come up. So whatever I can imagine and what you can imagine is we are at best right now a hybrid. Because all of us actually grew up in the Earth era, and now we are having to find a way to be the people who create the air era. We are the ones who are going to create what's going to happen next. So which is why the fact is nothing. So if anybody come and ask me, I'm doing this XYZ, is this air era? My official answer is that no, it isn't. It's a hybrid of Earth and air, simply because none of us who are old enough to be listening to this right now is actually a pure air era person. The official air era only started in 2020. So maybe if you have a 2-year-old somewhere in your house, then that person is a real air era person. Okay, so that's why, no. So nothing that you do right now is air era. So the only thing that we can all do in this live stream, here's the punchline, is that as we plan our 2022, just like what I'm telling you to do is what me and my team are doing right now, that every single step that we take right now is, the question is, can we be just that one more step more air era, one more step? And when you take 100 steps, suddenly we are a lot more air era than we were 100 steps before. So this is what I'm trying to get everyone to sort of think through at this point. Okay, so but then let's look at work. And let me see if I can help you out by giving you the keywords that will help you to plan if you're going to make changes to your environment this year. What are you going to change? So work in the air era. So I borrowed this picture of the Hunger Games, and because I also have no idea what technology will come up. But you see here something like a hologram, something that's pretty virtual, very digital. And I don't think this surprises anyone, isn't it? Like that's kind of where it is headed towards, all right? Okay, so if you will look at some of the keywords here, we have things like speed, instant. It's not just faster. People want things instant. It used to be that people don't mind going on the road to sort of like flag a cab. Now they're like, hey, how come my Grab hasn't shown up yet? Ask you to wait 4 minutes, so some people are like, I want it right now. So the instant with the internet age, that's what is required. So also you see things like agility. That means you don't want to have one product that remains the same for years and years. Things really have to keep changing. And I know it's making a lot of people very tired. They're like, oh, we have this constant change. And then we all think it's COVID, right? It's not COVID. So even if COVID is over, the reality is you're still going to have to keep changing your product. So that never is not going to end from here on. So even things like the social causes, how climate change is like the biggest buzzword nowadays, human individuality, and that's where the profiling comes in. And I think the intangibility, look guys, none of these should be surprising to you. And I think to some extent, more or less, that everybody is already moving in this direction. But I think what's very interesting is that, can you let go of the Earth era? I think is the difficult part. And just like a lot of people would, they would do business in the Earth era, but somehow still keep going back to creating fire era values. And that is the part that is difficult. So of course, if I was an architect right now, and if you look at the buildings that are coming up, so I mentioned earlier that we started putting glass and airflow and things into buildings, not like those big blocks, right? And these are just some examples. If you look at the top right-hand corner, people have already started to revolutionize what construction looks like. if you've ever been to a real construction site in the Earth era, it is dirty, it is disgusting, it is very dangerous. And I know it well because I was in construction for many years myself. But nowadays, construction sites are a lot safer and they're a lot faster. And I'm not sure if you know this, but some of these houses, these cute little houses that you see on my screen now, some of these things can be built in days, even a week. It's all prefabricated. They come and they sort of assemble it like Lego blocks. So it's a lot safer, and I think also a lot more climate conscious, in the sense that they are causing a lot less of the carbon footprint than our old buildings ever did. So this is a good example of even something as simple as homes and buildings will start to evolve into the air era. So yeah, and I think it's pretty cool because then you also get, because the houses are so small, that people are starting to think about minimalism. That means you don't want to keep buying crap that you fill up your house with, but not really sure when exactly you're going to use those items. Okay, so lives are simpler, it's cleaner, and people have more space to work with. So the thing is, now in history, in the past, I talked about the difficulty of letting go. So in the past, when we moved from fire to air, fire to earth, there were a lot of people who had difficulties letting go of the old fire values. And I'm going to show you some real life examples, which we are going to laugh at until we realize that we are doing exactly the same thing, yeah? So even as outwardly, they seem to be doing the earth era activities, but you realize that their motivation is still a fire era thing. So let me show you this example. This thing called a dollar princess. So a dollar princess refers to an American heiress, usually from a newly wealthy family. So that means in the 1800s, there were people who started factories and suddenly they become multi-millionaires. And what happened was that they had money and they had all the material trappings of the earth era, but there was one thing that they didn't have, which was that they were not royal. They wanted to still be part of the kings and queens. So what all these fantastic American men do was that they would take their daughters and marry them off to title rich but cash poor British noblemen. So all these American girls would go to Europe and marry all these earls and barons and dukes and whatever, just so that the rich man can say, see, I'm still related to the queen in some way or another. And of course, right now, as we look at this is such an old-fashioned idea that some of you may be thinking, basket, man, this guy he's so rich, he's multi-millionaire, and why you go and bother about all these like super dirt broke poor titled people who are like from some Shakespearean era? But you see, at the time, even rich and very intelligent people were still hankering back into fire era ideas. And just so you know, a lot of these marriages, they didn't quite work because a lot of these American girls, they grew up in the new earth era. They knew how to enjoy life and buy things, and they were very rich. So there was quite a famous story of a woman who went there and on her wedding day shocked all the people who were dressing her for the wedding because her body was filled with tattoos, because she's like American, yo. So and I think it just shocked them, this American girl, and with all this stiff upper lip British people. And a lot of these marriages didn't quite work. Okay, so we also have examples like these are the Luddites, and these were the workers who originally started out as craftsmen. So they were in the textile industry and they would weave beautiful cloths and stuff. So at the time, outwardly, they looked like they were transiting to the earth era because they went and got jobs in factories where the boss would have like a workplace and people would just go and work like the way we do. But the thing was, these people were very angry they couldn't let go of this idea of the fire craftsmen. We need to be proud of our craftsmanship. So if you look at number 2, as a member of any of the bands of English workers who went with a hammer in the middle of the night to smash the machines. So they would destroy the machines, especially in cotton and woolen mills, because they believed it was threatening their jobs. But you see, the funny thing is, we all know that they didn't win that battle. In the end, the machines still took over. And in the end, all these Luddites eventually became workers in a factory without any sense of the craftsmanship or anything, because everything is standardized and it's all done by a machine. So the thing is, trying to keep the old values, it's maybe it gives you a short-term feeling of like, okay, you know, we're still holding on to what is familiar, but history has shown, and it will happen again, that holding on to the old values isn't going to work. And this is the part that I think is most uncomfortable for most of us. Like, we're totally okay with picking up the new values, but it's the letting go of the old ones that's a bit hard. right? So that means even as outwardly, a lot of us are doing air era activities. We're going on Zoom. We are learning to use like digital payments, and we're starting to infuse a lot of all these counseling and discussions and things like that in our workplaces. But let's be really honest here, and I will include myself in this as well, that we actually have a lot of difficulties letting go of the earth mindset. That when I hire someone, do I still have that thought of like, okay, how much value is this person bringing to the table? Now, do I have thoughts like that? Of course I do, because I grew up in the earth era. Okay, so I mean, let me show you some examples of what I mean by people doing air but doing it for the earth purpose. So this is the tiny house movement. So we looked at some of these like cute little houses earlier, and it's very air era because a lot of these come with solar panels. They come with ways of processing human waste in responsible methods. And also I think it meant that very poor people who couldn't afford the proper houses could actually have a decent place to live in. So a lot of the social causes and environmental responsibility. But if you go on the internet and you type tiny house, here's what you're going to find right now, okay? People are talking about tiny homes, large profits, and that small size solution to bring big profitability for investors. Do you guys see the earth era words all over it, stamped all over? Investing in a tiny house Airbnb, that is very profitable, short-term rentals. And they say it's a relatively low investment, appeal to adventurous travels, have the added benefit of quick cleaning times. So which means cut costs and max out your profit. So you can see that even as we take 3 steps forward, it's also taking 2 steps back. But you see, is this a bad thing? I don't necessarily think it is, because as I said, we are all hybrid people. I'm a hybrid person and so are you. So which means the idea is to start thinking, okay, how can we start to slowly remove some of these earth things and then move more and more towards the air mindset? So even people talking about social causes among businesses, I got this from the Forbes website. Is social cause a necessity for a brand? So nowadays, people are taking up social causes, not because they really believe in the cause, but because it's like, hey, everyone's doing it. If we don't have a social cause, then we are behind. So again, an earth era mindset. And also, you see things like 5 ways aligning to a social cause can boost your business. So yeah, I mean, get in a social cause and maybe we'll make more money. And that's the mindset that most businesses have. And it's also one of the reasons why, if you look at the complaints that you get from younger workers who work for the older companies, they say, yeah, you know, we're doing all this social cause thing, but in their hearts, they know, yeah, all these old people, they're just doing it because everyone's doing it and because they can make more money out of it. So there it goes. We also have people saying, okay, here's how Mark Zuckerberg thinks that Facebook will profit by building a metaverse. So that's air era, but then definitely still thinking about how ways they can sort of charge you money for being on it. Okay, so again, another example. You have YouTube. When YouTube first started, if you look at the subtitle at the bottom, now it's the latest sign that YouTube no longer cares about the independent content creators that help grow its platform. So YouTube was great because it was free. And it meant that anyone, you didn't have to be a rich broadcaster. You could just be a random guy with a video camera in your garage, and you can build a channel. So it started from a very air era mindset, and then now it becomes it's an advertising medium. So that now they don't even bother with broadcast yourself. They basically only want videos where they can sell maximum advertising. So I don't know about you, but like, who's a bit sad about this? Like, seriously, like I get sad when I read like all the headlines like this, because it's like we got a lot of very intelligent people who build fantastic platforms, but somehow it's just taking away from the intention, the air era intention of what was being built. Okay, so the thing is, how then do we start to adjust our mindsets about money in the air era? Because money rules everything in our lives in the earth era. And you know, and I know that when I talked about this in previous webinars, some people get quite upset. They'll tell me, hey, May, you crazy? Are you saying that money is going to disappear? Now, my official answer to that is no, it's not. Because money is one of the universal concepts. The people in Machu Picchu had money. The people who, when they first started discovering that barter trade didn't work and they were exchanging stuff with shells, right? The shells were money. The Chinese people had circle coins with a square thing in the middle. Chinese people in ancient China had money. So why would money disappear? Of course, it is not going to disappear. It will always be there. But I think when we think about money, if we are going to put earth and air side by side, okay, so let me show you the simplest way of describing this. Now, in the air era, the idea about money is a simple thing called as much as possible. If you go to one of those seminars where they ask you, hi, who wants to make more money? And everybody raises their hand. It's not a matter of whether they needed more. The idea was, who would ever say no to making more money? That's the whole point, right? And if you change job and then you had a higher salary, like, who wouldn't change? Everybody would do it, because the idea is to as much as possible, AMAP, right? And then, but in the air era, it becomes a useful resource. Now, it's not that money becomes less important. Because if you think about it, in the fire era, Shakespeare, when he puts up a play, he kind of need to pay his workers, and they still need to buy their costumes and things like that. So money was always important. It was always a resource. So it's not that in the air era, money becomes not important. In fact, I would turn it the other way around and say that in the earth era, it became so important, so overly important, that it actually overshadowed everything else. That nothing was more important than money. That if there was no money, then nothing works. So it's the mindset change is rather that to prioritize money over everything else, is to realize that money is a resource and it has the same importance as every other resource. And I think that mindset is a lot easier for us to understand. And if I can illustrate this, right, there's something that a lot of gamers, okay, so I'm an incorrigible gamer. I love games, right? And this is a very old game that I played back in the 90s. And this game is called Heroes 3. But most gamers will recognize something like this. So it's like you work with a lot of resources, and if you look at the bottom, right at the very bottom, there's a bar that looks like this. So gamers know this, right? So along the way, you gather resources, and including money. So right on the right-hand side, at the far right, you can see that there's gold, 1,774,000 gold there. But you see, for gamers, the gold isn't more important than other resources. It can be just as difficult, if not more difficult, to get yourself some gems or some crystals. And the thing is, ultimately, the idea is that you don't actually walk around in the game world trying to earn as much money as possible. And that kind of isn't how the games work. In the end, a lot of these resources are only necessary because if you wanted to build a new catapult, if you wanted to build a night falcon, you need 3,500 gold. So if you didn't have 3,500 gold, you would do a few quests. You might go to a new land and start gathering a few more resources, just so that you get 3,500 to buy your Night Falcon, and then you can move on with your life. But it wasn't like after you bought the Night Falcon and then you were thinking, hey, how about we just do a bit more stuff to earn as much gold as possible? No gamer ever does that. They simply buy the Night Falcon so that they can level up and go to the next thing. So what I'm trying to explain here is that the air era deals with money like this. So that means you need to be absolutely clear, what is it that you're trying to do? What is the next step? And if you needed that resource, go get the resource. But if you didn't need it, there's no need to go and squeeze everything in your life just to get every last dollar, which is, I think, for those of you who have been following my webinars, it is starting to feel like it's weighing on people that we're just doing unnecessary things for the extra $1,000, for the extra $500. It's very sian for a lot of people, okay? So I just want to illustrate, like, even in the Earth era, like how pervasive it was. Now, if you start from people who are very young, when you're in school, you know how when you fail your exam, and then your mother tells you that next time you're going to be poor? It's like, they don't say that, oh, you fail exam, you're going to be stupid. They say, no, you're going to be poor, you cannot find job, and you're going to sweep the floor. And it's like, even education, from a very, very young age, you are conditioned that everything is about money. And when it was time for you to go into your polytechnics, to choose a course, go into university to decide what you were going to major in, how often it is that you end up not picking what was natural to you. You didn't pick what was interesting or what you were passionate about. You simply picked what you thought could maybe get you a job, or maybe pay you a decent salary in the future. So that means right from the start, when people are barely even out of their 18 years old, your life is already run by the money that overshadows everything else. And later on, when you start looking at work, how often people simply pick the jobs and the industries based on what was going to pay a lot better, and not really about anything else at all, just money, number one. Then later, then we talk about whether we like the job or not. So money first. Homes. And you think about, at one point, I was a real estate agent. I had a stint there. And it struck me how many people were buying homes, not because they needed a place to house the family or for people to be happy in their homes, but they were they started their search based on which area can make the most money out of their house. So the profit is number one. And I still recall when I first moved into my home, I live on the 33rd floor of my building, and people would come and go, wow, what a great view. And people would tell me, hey, in 5 years time when the MOP is up, you can sell and then you can make a lot of money because you have an unblocked view. And I'm just thinking, well, I mean, I have an awesome view. And this is the home that I want. And it's like a lot of people are like all they can see is the 𝗥𝗃, your view is worth $1 million. And I'm like, okay. So it's where home versus money more important than home. Okay, so that's what comes up a lot. The law, how many people are suing each other, brothers and sisters suing each other because they wanted a more share of their mother's inheritance or whatever it was. Communities not really linking out with people because you were looking for like-minded people. You wanted to do that because when you went there, each person has a 𝗥𝗃, like a dollar sign on their forehead, and that networking is about business and seeing what you can get out of them. So in that sense, what I'm trying to show you here is that this is the world that we are living. So if there's a part of you at all that starts to realize that, yeah, I mean, the human race kind of got to a point where beyond 𝗥𝗃, they can't just see anything else already. So that means as I'm introducing the new concepts here, it becomes a lot easier for us to see now as hybrid people. Are there things that we kind of want to change about things? Because if you're telling me that this world is great and it's great for all our kids and all to live in that world, then okay lor. But you don't get a choice in that era already. So you see, like, talk about kids, right? People talk about ROI. Like what's the best way to get the most out of my children? People are saying, what's the ROI on having a kid? And that children are bad ROI, therefore don't have kids because you're not going to get your money back. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Guys, I just went on Google and I found this page one. It's very easy to find this kind of thing. And it scares me, when I was preparing these slides. And then, so of course, a lot of people responded on my survey and you said you wanted to know what about dating was going to be like in the air era. Let's start with how dating is like in the earth era, okay? It's supposed to be two people meeting each other, get to know each other, maybe fall in love. But hey, look, 10 financial warning signs to watch out when in a relationship. Or how to talk about money when you're dating. Or dating, 5 financial issues that make you look unappealing. Or even how soon should money come out in a new relationship. I don't know, guys. Like, what do you all think? Like, show some reaction, please. Yeah, am I correct or not? Like, you go on a date and one of the first things that come up, the awkward conversation is like, so what do you do? Which is another way of knowing, like, what's your income and how much money do you make? And what kind of life, what kind of material life can I expect if I were to maybe marry you sometime in the future? It's pretty sad. And it makes dating so complicated. And it's a lot more difficult than just getting to know somebody for who they are. And so I'm trying to suggest, okay, so in a backhanded way, I'm also suggesting that in the air era, whether you like this swiping Tinder or whatever, or just going online with an avatar who doesn't look anything like you, in a way, it sort of allows people, I think, to, much as I feel a bit sad that people are not like seeing each other face to face, but it allows you to really talk to someone. When you're on a chat room, I remember when I was on MIRC when I was a teenager, it meant that you actually did speak to someone with no regard as to what they look like or what their skin color was or who they were. You simply spoke to them person to person. And I think that is kind of a step that you can take towards the air era where we kind of stop valuing people based on the 𝗥𝗃 and the dollars. And I think it really makes a difference to how we treat each other. Okay, so the biggest question that all of us will have, and I had this question for years, knowing that this air era was coming, and I'm a very earth person, I'm Taurus, and my moon is in Capricorn, I'm a very earth person. So I asked myself for years, how then do we shift out of this 𝗥𝗃 mindset? And I created a very simple model, which I hope you give me the time to explain this, because I think it helps people to see the cycle of how we ended up with this money mindset to begin with. Now, first of all, it's this concept of how we all need money. We need money to pay the bills. We need money to buy a house. And we need money to just get by and to have a good life. So based on this, that's how we came up with the idea of work for money. As I illustrated earlier, this was inculcated in all of us from a very young age. That you could be 5 years old and your parents would tell you better go to school and study hard because otherwise you're going to be poor after. We all heard this crap from when we were much younger. So the problem with this idea is that you start to think of work equals for money. And that is why for many people, this idea of work is that something that you don't enjoy. It's like you have to show up there, do this horrible thing that your boss asks you to do, because if you don't do it, you're going to be poor and you're not going to be able to pay your bills. So that's why on the whole, it's common to see people going for lunch and sometimes the topics are just about complaining about work, and it becomes a pervasive cultural thing that's been going on. And that's why a lot of people start talking about, maybe I hate this and I want to quit my job, I want to get away. Okay, so then it creates another social phenomenon where now, because we are so miserable in our jobs, then the only thing we can think of is how are we going to cope with all this work that we have to do. So it creates phenomena that never happened in other eras. Last time, fire era, water era, before that, don't have this problem. Now, first of all, is that people got sick. And it's not common, it's not uncommon that people work until they actually become sick. And it used to be a physical thing. You work until, wow, some people are attributing stress and lack of sleep and lack of taking care of yourself to cancer and all sorts of that. And now we're starting to realize that there's an even bigger problem known as mental illness. And people are getting stressed and depressed and all that stuff. So what happens then? You need to see doctors, you need pills, and that stuff is getting more and more expensive. And when it gets more and more expensive, then you need even more money, because now you better buy some insurance. If not, after that, if you get sick, that's bad, right? And then on top of that, we start to have certain expenditures because we work so much. You have to pay for the childminder, the cleaner, people who do your laundry for you, laundry services, car services. It's all things that we end up having to pay other people to do, because 90% of your time is spent working. So you couldn't do it yourself, which is why you have to pay, and now you have to work even more to pay all these people. You start to see the cycle, yeah? And then on top of that, so people hate their jobs so much that holidays became a thing. And that's why during the COVID period, so many people were miserable, because it's like, I cannot go holiday. Like, I really hate my job. Now I cannot go holiday. I have nothing to look forward to. I've heard this phrase from so many people, that the only thing that they look forward to in their lives is that one holiday that they need to get to, because they just need to get away from their work. So that's, and holidays got more and more extravagant and expensive, because why shouldn't I work hard and I should reward myself. So now people end up staying in the job because they need the holidays. And if you left your job, then you couldn't pay for the holiday. And you sort of see the irony here. And then you also get people who decided that I don't make enough, so maybe I should get an MBA, but the MBA costs like a 6-figure sum. So now you have to work to pay for the MBA, so the MBA gets you more money. Wow. And then the best part is now they're also saying that I want to make lots and lots of money so that my kids can get a degree and then they can do the exact same thing that I'm doing right now. Because you kind of thought that if your kids got a degree, they have a better life, right? Well, that's what your parents thought, and look what happened to you, right? So the reality is we get into this cycle where with all these expenditures that are coming up, then all the more you need even more money. And so it becomes this cycle where it's like a dog chasing its own tail, and we never get out of it. So one of the things that we have seen in most recent years is that the revolution has begun. That a lot of people have begun asking, how about what if? And if you look at this model, right, the part that is the most unpleasant is this one. So that's why a lot of people start to look for a solution. How can we get money without working? And that's why in the last 20 years, once we reverted back into the Earth era, there was a new phenomenon called the passive income. That people wanted to invest in property. They wanted to go and sign up for an investment seminar, try and hope to like make money while you sleep. So that was the buzzword, and it was so attractive to people because it was a way of maintaining your lifestyle without having to work your butt off, right? And so that came up. And we also see that phenomenon becoming extremely strong right now, because we now have, it's like the new phenomenons are people have asked me, send me emails, hey May, like how about people who have made bucket loads of money, they become millionaires playing with cryptocurrency. And we also have people asking me that, if you look at Scandinavian countries, and in the US, they start talking about this universal basic income. So for people who don't know what this is, UBI is that essentially that just because you are a citizen, you get paid some money. And that's basically the idea is that it helps to supplement some people's income lah. But it's not like a large amount. I believe in the US, they were sort of playing around with like $1,000 or something. It won't make you a millionaire, but it meant that some people don't have to suffer lah, in that sense. And also some people have asked now, is it possible that in the air era, that money is just so easy that you actually don't need to work anymore. So the thing is, guys, I do a lot of research when I do these online events. And I have to admit, based on what I have seen through all the studies that I've done, that it is quite likely that this can happen. So at this point, many people will be like, yes, it's like, we're going to make money without working. And let me show you what I mean, okay? So this is very common now, right? Honestly, if you go online, if you're a gamer like me, if you like mobile games and stuff, now this is the hottest thing now. Play games and make money. And you've seen those ads, right? People are like matching numbers and make a sentence and stuff, like easy stuff that primary school kids can do. And they go, yes, I just made $500. We've all seen this. Now, is it real? But at first, I thought it was like super scammy, right? I think some of it is quite scammy. But the thing is, some of these are real. And people have made real money from doing this. So what does this mean then? And I spent so much time thinking about this. And I recalled this image that I saw in a Disney movie. And this was from 𝗟𝗶𝗳𝗲. Who remembers this? Can you show some reaction? Like, give me an emoticon or something. Like, who actually watched this? And you saw all these fat people sitting on a conveyor belt, right? And they're all looking at screens. They're all like stuffing their faces, and they're all fat and they look a bit like babies, like fetuses that are incapable of doing anything else. And their relationships with their friends consist of talking to a screen, just like, frankly, like what I'm doing now. I'm talking to a screen also. But the thing is, we tend to think of this reality as being like very, very far into the future. But if you really think about it, I found this image online, and there are times when we can laugh at this and go like, oh my God, that's disgusting, or that looks bad, but honestly, there are times during the COVID period where I felt like I was like this. I felt like the fatty in front of the screen, just stuffing my face. I started eating my meals in front of my screen too. And I don't know if you are doing the same thing. So that means the fact is we are all getting there. To the point where there's not a lot of work being done. People are not necessarily being productive. They're just consuming a lot of these media and entertainment and not really doing very much with their lives. Now, I think also that if we think that it's just an us thing, like, or maybe you've earned the right to do that because you've made some money, I want to show you another image that's even more scary, okay? Because the next generation is starting to look like this also. And I just saw an article on Channel News Asia just a few days ago that apparently, studies have shown that the kids in Singapore are getting fatter and fatter. So they're all starting to look a bit like this. And this image scares me because it doesn't even look like they're mentally processing what they're consuming. It's like the eyes glaze over and they're just watching images on a screen. And the thing is, I don't know about you, but I think we are starting to resemble more and more like those fatties on the 𝗟𝗶𝗳𝗲 movie. And I think there's a part of me that's just thinking like, okay, are people kind of okay with this, or that we can just make money like for free and then all your bills are paid so that you kind of can watch Netflix all day? Or is it that are people still thinking like, no, I kind of don't really want to do that? So I want to sort of like poll all of you. So I promised you that this live stream is not going to be a one-way thing. So from here on, I'm done with my lecture stuff. So which means from here on, there will be a lot of these, let's get to know what everyone thinks. So how this works, guys, is totally anonymous. So don't worry, no one will know that you are the one who gave the answer. And if you can grab your phone, you just scan the QR code and it will take you to a Slido screen where this question will be there. Okay, so then we're going to show, it's real time so that we can see what everybody's responses are. And it's very important to me because if right now everyone says that we kind of want to like just not work anymore, then I think the rest of my presentation is okay we can close short and then I can save my breath already. Okay, so yeah, so can everybody go do that? And okay, so let's go and look at some of the responses. I think some of the early things are coming in. Come, Jeremy, if we can just have it on the screen. Oh, okay, wow, look at that. Okay, so is that it? Like yeah, okay. So I think we're just going to give a few more seconds for people to sort of respond a little bit. And okay, now I'm very heartened. Okay, I have to admit I was a bit scared when I created this poll. I'm like, could it be like 100% of people say that, yeah, we kind of want to be like crypto millionaires, that we don't have to do anything anymore? Okay, so it does look like about a third of the people, okay, 60% of the people are like, okay, I intend to switch. I want to do something a bit better. And frankly, I mean, if universal basic income shows up, it won't make us millionaires, but it maybe pays for the internet, it pays for the electricity, it pays for the waste disposal. And what this means is you don't have to panic that your family is going to starve. And which means, okay, we can now use our skills much better. And there are people who actually, this is also very nice, to say that I still want to do the job that I do now, but maybe I don't want to work so hard, which makes sense because a lot of things are going to be automated. Then you don't have to do the grunt stuff, which is cool. And what this also tells me is that quite a lot of you, at least 42% of you, are in a job that you are quite happy about. Okay, so which I think that's great. Now, I myself, I believe I belong in the middle category. That I think in the last few years, I've worked like a dog, frankly. And it makes me feel good that a lot of things are automated. My team have to work a lot less now because we can schedule things, it's easier. Okay, so there are people who still want to basically not want to work anymore, and that's cool too, because it's an option that will be available to a lot of us. And frankly, with the robots coming, there's going to be a lot less work. So if everybody else wants to work, then that could be a bit tricky. Okay, so but moving on, okay, we start to look at things like Thomas Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think what we are really looking at is the bottom two rows. If it's pretty much covered by the basics, then okay lah, then we can look at other things. And I want to draw your attention to the top two tiers. Because if you look at things like the feeling of accomplishment, you can only ever have that feeling if you have done something and you've gotten a positive response out of it. And at the highest level, the most important word I want to highlight here is the word creative activities. And I think for the longest time, people think of creativity as music or art or design, or like the person can sing very well, have talent. And I think creative is a lot more than that. If you look at programmers and you have a blank MS-DOS screen, to program something from absolute scratch, maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned, maybe now people don't use MS-DOS really, yeah? But the point is, when you start from nothing and you can create something, now that is creative. And I believe strongly that in the careers to come, that the only thing that we can do in future are creative work. It is the only work that's left for humans to do, because it's the one thing that robots can't do. And that really is a major punchline. So the thing is, then in that case, if people are no longer working for money, but from what I see here is that the majority of us, we still want to do some level of work. So therefore, what might really help us to let go of the Earth era mindset? Now, I'm going to propose a very different thing. That rather than look at work for money as the bad guy, now I take a very different view as to what the real bad guy is. And I think the real bad guy is this one. That it's this idea in our heads that we need a lot of money. It's a bit like your family is not actually starving, but then you still force them to live in a house that they don't like, because then that maybe that house can sell for more than the house that they like. So there's this idea here that we need a lot of money. And I'm starting to think that it may not be the case. So the question is really like, from now moving into the air era, how much money do we actually need? So I started with myself. And I looked at my life in the last 2 years when we have been in sort of like semi-lockdown along the way. So like most of you, I work from home. And it looks like this, like it's just essentially me and my laptop, right? And what I think was, I gave up my office during that time, because I mean, it helps to be an astrologer. So I knew that it wasn't a 2-month COVID thing. Like I knew it was going to be a long thing, right? So I gave up my office. And it meant that I saved a huge amount. Honestly, I probably saved like at least $80,000 from upkeep and various other things. And to me also, when I examine my life, now here's my story and what I save money on. Now when you talk about things like clothes, yes, I still have to be in front of camera, so I have a lot of these dark blue clothes. It's dark blue because all my clothes are dark blue, But the thing is, other than being in front of the camera, I actually don't meet a lot of people anymore. So I don't need to buy so many clothes. I save a lot of money on buying clothes. And I don't have to buy shoes anymore. Not sure if you realize it, but even when you're working, because people only see your Zoom screen, right? No one sees your shoes. So I don't know you buy so many shoes for what. In the last 2 years, I only bought 1 pair of footwear. And right now I own a grand total of 4 pairs of footwear in total. That's it. And also things like printing. I run a school. So we print a lot of things. And if you ask my team, sitting in front of that printer watching the paper like coming out is a super ultimate waste of time, but we had to do it. And the printer cartridge is super expensive, most expensive liquid in the world. And ever since the air era happened, it was like, yes, we barely printed anything. So it's like, I'm not even sure when's the last time I saw my printer really. Okay, so that's something we absolutely save a lot of money on paper and stuff. Grab, I barely go out anymore, don't need Grab anymore. I still do, but not as much as what I used to. And you look at things like the festivals, Christmas, the Chinese New Year's, when we don't go out. I'm not saying that this is a good thing. I'm just saying that factually in the last 2 years, expenditure went down a lot. These are just some examples. And I like to poll the audience, like, is it just me that I save a lot of money? I had a lot of these excess resources that I didn't see a use for it. And is it just me, or is it like that for you also? Okay, so let's do another poll, right? Did you also experience that you spend less on stuff? So me and my team, we came up with a random list of things, and we're just curious to know, like, did people actually realize that moving on, having spent less on this in the last 2 years, that you can actually see a life where you continue doing this and you're not exactly miserable or like poor or deprived, right? So guys, let's have the results. It's real time, so you can see your responses getting featured like almost immediately. Yeah, I can see people like putting comments here. It's like, you know, it's cheaper than buying now new. Yeah. Okay, so what did you spend less on? Oh, okay, look at that. Wow, look at that. That's interesting. Okay, so basically clothes. Look, clothes, shoes, bags, wallet. No one cares about that stuff anymore, right? Yeah, holidays also. And can we scroll down? Can we see more of the responses, or is that it? Okay, so yeah, so things like events, yeah, it's totally down. Look at that. Oh man, look at that. So it's like even additional redundant things that you buy when you go to the shopping malls, like half of the people, when you don't go shopping mall, you don't buy those extra things that you didn't intend to buy anyway. Yeah, food, especially eating out, paper. A printer cartridge only 42%. You people are still using a lot of paper, see? Okay, interesting. Yeah. So I think we get the idea. And if you can do this exercise on your own, really. And I think even as you are going to make that change to your career, whether you run your own business or whatever, that realization that we can live happy, satisfied lives without having to spend that much. Suddenly, if you don't need so much, that changes your career criteria. And suddenly, like for all the people who said that if money was easier, I would switch to a more meaningful or creative job. The fact is, it's happening right now. That in fact, you actually don't need so much. And now is the time that makes a lot more sense for people to do this, yeah? So, and I think moving forward into this more era concepts, we are also seeing a new set of problems because a lot of these companies now are finding it really hard to hire people and to engage people, especially if you're looking for like the youngsters who are a lot more tech savvy. And I think it's not enough to just offer people salary. Because once people realize that I really don't need that much money, and if I think that your company sucks, right, I don't, no matter how much you pay me, I still don't want to work. And I think it's very interesting that in the last few weeks, the classes that I've been teaching, we've had some really young people, 24 years old and below, who came in, and what they say in my classes is quite shocking for the older people, because a lot of these young people are saying that, I had this offer from the company and I didn't want the job, but in the end they offered me like so much more, so I just did it for the money. And then once I collected the money, I just left. I just quit and I didn't bother to stay. And for some of the older people are like, yeah, you know, all this 𝗟𝗲𝘀, right? But the point is that the truth is, what they realize is I didn't need that much money. And what became more and more important to that new generation that's coming up is that it needs to be meaningful and creative. And so that in the second half, as I said, what can we do? If you are 𝗟𝗲𝘁'𝘀 like me, right, we have to make a lot of changes to how we do things. And also, the other thing is that the people who are remaining in the team are starting to become less and less motivated. And that's something that we've all noticed, that just this idea of like, oh, there's a bonus or we're going to get this job done, it's just dreary now. And how do you get back this idea of, wow, I really enjoy, I find what I do meaningful? How do we do that? Okay, we're going to talk about that after the break. And also what needs to happen in 2022, especially if some of you who are listening to this are leading teams. You may be part of communities. And if we don't fix this now, a lot of things are going to go dead this year and in the years coming. And so after the break, here's what I'm going to cover. Okay, now there are 11 specific things that all of us need to change about our careers. And they are so simple that we can actually implement them in our own ways in the everyday things that we do. Simple 11 air era things. And I'm also going to be looking at some real life examples. Because if I talk about just theory, right, it's theoretical, and a lot of people cannot visualize like how does this work? And are there people who have achieved this? So I'm going to be featuring 6 people. They are all my students, and they are people who have actually gone and used their astrological charts and their astrological profiles to specifically design the kind of careers that really fits into what the air era is going to demand of us as human beings. Okay, so we're going to deal with all of this after the break. And so we're going to go for a 10-minute break. I know some people are asking like, okay, how do we get in touch with some of your previous webinars? We still want to see your predictions. And now that it's 2022, you want to go back and review like the previous stuff that I did in other webinars. Go ahead and scan that QR code. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you can, leave a comment at the end of the video after you watch my live stream. But don't watch now. They are like 3 hours and 6 hours. Okay. So now after the break, I'm going to take a few questions. So if you have questions that you'd like me to answer, you can put them onto the group chat, on the Facebook chat, or on the YouTube live chat. And my team are going to be highlighting some of these questions that I'll answer right after the break. Okay. So 10 minutes. We are 11:20 now. I will resume at 11:30. See you guys in a while.
Every night in my dreams, I see you, I feel you. That is how I know you. Go on.
I want it that way.
Hit me, baby, one more time.
I don't want no scrub. Scrub is a guy that can't get no love from me.
Hanging on the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me.
I'm a genie in a bottle. You gotta love me the
It's
right
my
way.
life, it's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. I just wanna live while I'm alive.
I
Bye,
did.
bye, bye. I'm Mr. Brightside.
We're meant to be together. I'll be there and you'll be near. And that's the deal, my dear.
I'll walk this empty street on the boulevard of broken dreams, where the city sleeps and I'm the only one and I walk alone. When you left, I lost a part of me. It's still so hard to believe. Come back, baby, please, 'cause we belong together.
You should let me love you. Let me be the one to give you everything
You're
you
beautiful.
want and need.
Said I'm so sick of love songs, so tired of tears, so done with wishing you were still here. Said I'm so sick of love songs, so sad and slow. Why can't I turn off the radio?
Hey there, Delilah, what's it like in New York City?
To the left,
You're 1,000 miles
You're
away, girl,
irreplaceable.
tonight you look so pretty.
I said it's
yes, you
too
do.
late to apologize. Touch my body, throw me on the floor, wrestle me around, play with me some more.
Just
Touch my body,
stand
throw me on the
there,
bed.
me
I just wanna make you feel like you never
It's
did.
alright, because I love the way you lie.
You know I'd catch a grenade for
California
ya.
girls were unforgettable days. They do bikinis
I'm on the right track, baby, I was born this way. Now you're just somebody that I used to
Shine
know.
bright, the timeline. But here's my number, so call me maybe.
I knew you were trouble when you walked in.
'Cause I'm happy.
I'm alive. What do you
so happy.
mean? I'm alive.
'Cause I'm happy. I gotta be so rude. Don't you know I'm human too?
Come on, my makeup on. It's Friday night and I won't be long.
To love me like you do, love me like you do. ¿Qué you think? Despacito, puedo respirar tu cuello despacito. Deja que te diga cosas al oído. Quiere que te acuerdes si no estás conmigo.
So won't you ride with me, see where this thing goes. If it's meant to be, it'll be, baby, if it's meant to be. 'Cause I know
I love the shape of you.
half of my heart is in
Just
love.
like
I know
nicotine,
that
heroin, morphine. Suddenly I'm feeling all I need,
Baby.
all I need.
why don't you just meet me in the middle? I'm losing my mind just a little. So why don't you just meet me in the middle? In the middle. Close your eyes, make a wish, and blow out the candlelight.
If you wanna be my lover, you gotta get with my friends. Make it last forever. Friendship never ends. If you wanna be my lover, you have got to give. Taking is too easy, but that's the way it
And I
is.
swear by the moon and the stars in the sky, I'll make love to
I don't want no scrubs, cause I gotta can't get no
like
love
you
from
want
me.
me
Hanging on the
to.
passenger side of his best friend's ride.
It's tearing up my heart when I'm with you, but when we are apart, I feel it too. And no matter what I do, I feel the pain. Never without you. Never ever have I ever felt so low. When you're gonna take me out of this black hole? Bop, ba-doo-ba-da-ba-doo, bop, ba-doo-ba-da-ba-doo, bop, ba-doo-ba-da-ba-doo.
Do you believe in
It's the hardest
magic?
thing I'll ever have to do, to look you in the eye and tell you I don't love
It's like,
you.
whoa, whoa,
Baby, when the lights go out, 'cause I never wanna see you cry.
say my name, say my name. If no one is around you, say, baby, I love you. You ain't
You
running.
are my fire, the one desire, believe when I say I want it that way.
There are times I find it hard to sleep at night.
Until you're back here, baby. Miss you, want you, need you so.
I'm telling you, loosen up my buttons, babe, but you keep frontin'. Say what you gon' do to me, but I ain't seen
'Cause I
nothing.
want it all or nothing at all. There's nowhere left
The
to fall.
world slows down, but my heart beats fast right now.
I'm slipping into the lava.
I don't
The story
care.
of my life, I take her home.
Pledge allegiance to my independent girls in here. Give it to me, I'm
You
worth
don't
it.
know you're beautiful.
I'm worth it. Shout out to my ex, you're really quite the man. You made my heart break and that made me who I am. I got the recipe and it's called black magic.
Sorry, but it's big love.
Kiss me, kiss me.
Okay, guys. it's 11:30, and we're just gonna continue with this. And so my team's just been sort of looking through, and we've noticed some really good questions. So we're gonna sort of put them on the screen, and then I'll address them. Okay, so guys, let's have the first question up. And okay, just give me a second for the question to come up. Okay, now the one question here from Ling Li, she asked, what are the prospects for environmental jobs? I mean, this one I think is a fairly easy one. It's quite clear that environmental, almost anything, it's an air era manifestation. It's just like industrialization in the Earth era. Anything that's industrialization will be in demand. So in terms of prospects, then okay, I mean, if your concern is will there be jobs, will I be able to survive in an environmental job, then short answer is yes. I think almost every country will be looking at this, and I think that's a really easy question because it's a classic air era concern. Okay, let's have the next question then. Okay, so Augustine had a question on banks, and I might be wrong, but I think Augustine has asked this question before on some of my previous online events. And they wanted to know, will banks still be around during the air era, or what kind of form will banks evolve? So the thing about banking, okay, so we talk about just the concept of banking itself is a universal concept. Banks in some shape or form have existed since the beginning of time. As long as there have been money, there have been loans. So as long as those things are around, and I think that is kind of maybe still going to be a thing moving forward in terms of like this as a lending facility. Banks are fairly universal. I think the difference here is that when you put in the Earth era thing, that means when the banks exist to provide a service, to loan money to the people who need it, and then to return that money back based on the interest rate, that form of bank, that function will always be there. But I think if you'll be very honest with yourself, during the Earth era, the banks didn't really exist to lend you money. The banks kind of existed to make money for themselves. And I think that is what is going to change. So those other things that are not universal, that as long as something is, it arises from the Earth era. Quite a lot of the banking products that you see pretty much showed up during Earth era. Those are probably not, I'm being kind when I say probably, it's not going to survive into the air era if history is going to be any indication. And I just want to add on that you can apply this to virtually almost any other thing that you see as part of the Earth era. Because if it came up, like for example, you talk about Olympics, right? Like sports have always been, it's a universal concept. They had sports in ancient Greece. That's where the Olympics came from. But to think of the Olympics as a way of the country get a lot more tourists to come, spend money, and then it's all like a money game and the sponsorship. You get Coca-Cola sort of sponsoring Olympics, drinks that are actually not good for you, sponsoring a sports event. That kind of thing really only came out in the Earth era, and that's the kind of nonsense that will end in the air era lah. Okay. So and the third question here is from William Lu, and he asked, how about a social credit system? Yeah, sure. I mean, this has already come up in China, and I know a few countries are sort of experimenting with this. And I would include this in that category of, is it possible that money is going to be so easy that you don't really have to work? So yeah, but at the same time, do you really think that the social credit system, by liking what the government is saying on social media, is that going to make you a millionaire, or is that necessarily going to pay all your bills? Honestly, I don't know. I just don't think it's super likely. It might mean that you don't starve and die lah, but to make you like rich, that's not going to happen. But at the same time, one of the problems with this social credit system is like how it's going to be credited. Like, do you get credits for doing something productive, like really helping society, or are you getting credits for just liking posts, right? And that's not really helping anything lah. So not sure about that. Okay, so but is social credit system going to come up? I think the short answer is probably yes, because quite frankly, it ticks all the air era boxes. So it will come out, but in what shape or form is really, your guess is as good as mine. Okay, so those are the general questions. And thank you for the people who submitted the questions. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so that was the Q&A portion, yeah? Okay, so now the second half, we start going into the actual careers, skills, and the people that we have to work with moving forward. And this picture is from the Great Resignation. And I think the biggest phenomenon here, why it was so shocking for a lot of people, was that you would expect during COVID that people would hang on to their jobs. It's hanging on for dear life, that unemployment was going to go up. But what they didn't count on was that phenomenon that people were quitting. And not because they had another job that was waiting for them that was going to pay them more. People were quitting without necessarily having a job lined up. And I think you also saw another phenomenon was that a lot of the competent people who knew that they were very genuinely good at what they were doing, didn't want to get a job at all. That they realized that they could offer their services directly to the end consumer and to market themselves on the internet. And they were, not only did they survive, actually a lot of people started to do very well for themselves, doing real work for real customers online. And so it became that phenomenon where some of the companies were losing some of their best employees. Okay, so that's something that we see. For DW, which is a German broadcasting company, said that 41% of employees, and I think this is a European statistic, 41% are considering leaving their jobs within the next 6 months to a year. And we also see this one I got from Channel News Asia just a couple of weeks ago, why many workers are deciding to step off the corporate grind in 2022. So it's not just happening in Europe, at least according to Channel News Asia, it's expected to happen in Singapore as well. And if you read this article, they also went and surveyed the people who were intending to leave in the next 6 months, and it's a pretty high number. So that means if you yourself are operating in a corporate type environment, even if you yourself don't leave, the chances that you are going to lose quite a lot of your workmates. And the funny thing is they tend to be the people who are the competent ones, right? And then how? Okay, so there are a lot of studies being done. What exactly are people calling for in their jobs? So these important factors include all your transparency, trust, communications, collaboration, digital experiences, culture of belonging and inclusion, listening, engagement, recognition, upskilling opportunities, corporate social responsibility, and also hybrid work environments. None of these words should be a surprise to you. They are words that have been bandied around in the corporate transformation arena. And one of the interesting things is nobody here talked about more like promotion opportunities. Nobody is looking for higher, like I don't see higher salaries here. So if these are the reasons why people are leaving, it means that the priorities have changed in a very, very large way. And I think for a lot of companies, it's a complete change of how we used to reward people or how you're going to decide if someone has done a good job. So if somebody in the company is a very good listener, for example, now that person could be very valued within the team now, but maybe that person has never been valued in the company before. And there wasn't a reward system to reward that person who was so good at listening that everybody goes and shares their problems with that person, even though it's not part of their work scope. So the thing is, I think companies are struggling with like that whole valuation of people. And I think that's from my perspective. Okay, so I think those are those studies that are being done by human resource people. Now, what I can come up with to contribute to everyone here is the astrological perspective. And if we look at how the world moved from fire to earth to air, there are very simple criteria for what is our definition of a good job. So the picture that you see on my screen here is from the fire era. And it shows a ship that is proudly displaying the flag that they are flying. And this is very intrinsic to the fire era because people used to work for pride and glory. If you were a tailor, you wanted to work for the master tailor that was known for his craftsmanship. If you were going to be a sailor on a ship, then it really mattered to you what flag you were flying, because you wanted to make sure that in a battle, you want to make sure that you had a good chance of winning, because then our team is stronger and the sailors are tougher. You also cared about which king or which queen you were serving. You want to make sure you're on the right side. And if it seemed like one of the kings was like slowly losing favor, you might switch allegiances to the new king who had a more legit claim to the throne. So that was the way people thought about their work during the Earth era. So, and basically what this meant was at the time, during the Fire era, and it meant that people were not necessarily picking their jobs based on who was paying more. I think in those days, the social class thing was different. You could pay more, but then if you were some low-level person, they didn't want to work for you. But this changed in the Earth era because people went to the companies that were more stable financially. They wanted the prospect of being able to make more money within a reasonable period of time. And success, or when you meet up with family members, they decided whether you were successful or not based on what car you drove, which condo you stay, and how much money or the rank and designation that's written on your name card. So that was in the Earth era. So everything that I've just mentioned is pretty much like a gone thing already. Basically, the upcoming generation doesn't really give a damn about those things anymore. So what matters in workplaces from here onwards, this is super important, is this picture here that shows 3 hands. Basically, it's the idea of a team coming together to solve a problem. So it's a bit like a puzzle solving. So what I'm trying to convey here is that they are putting their ideas together, and it's not an idea that comes from one person. It's a collaborative effort. So there is discussion involved. So people would exchange a high-paying job for an environment where there is a lot more collaboration, that your views are being respected. And at the end of the day, not so much that the company is profitable and making money, but rather that we are doing something useful and of value to society. So that's what's coming up here. And so before we go on, let's get a poll of everyone. How accurate are the statistics? 41% people want to be part of the Great Resignation. Now, is this real, or are the newspapers shitting us, right? So can you do this? Go scan that QR code and let me know. Are you part of the Great Resignation? Did you already quit? Or are you intending to leave for a meaningful or creative position? Or perhaps some of you are already running your own outfit that is the meaningful creative position, but maybe that doesn't mean that you're not part of the Great Resignation. Okay, so let's have the results and let's see what's come up here. And interesting. What kind of answer is that? 100% of the people are planning to leave. It's so nobody actually already quit. Can't be. Okay, so I see 50%. Okay, good. So now it's starting to be a bit more spread out now. Okay, interesting. So I see more responses coming in. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I see comments also. People are extending contracts and stuff. Okay, now we're getting a more accurate picture. Okay, so 35% from what I see, about a third of you. Okay, starting to go down. About a third of you already resigned in the last 2 years. So that's pretty crazy, right? And during the pandemic years on top of that. And then there are people, about a quarter of the people are planning to leave. And then there's a quarter of people who say they're planning to leave, but they don't really have a timeline on it. There's someday, one day. Those of you who are my students who are listening to this, my little joke about someday, one day, it means never. But okay, so I'm already in okay, can I scroll down and see who is already in a meaningful and creative job? Let's see. Okay, so wow, looks like wow, look at that. Okay, a third of the people are already in a great job. And okay, can I see at the bottom, right at the very bottom, because we're just scrolling so that you can all see what's going on. Okay, so right at the very bottom, just to see who are very interested in coming out with their own outfits. Okay, so there are people who are planning to leave in 2022, and 4% of you are happy where you are. It's oh wow, that's not even 1 in 20 people. That's not even 1 in 20 people. Okay, so that means this 2022, guys, if you look at the statistics here, just polling whoever's on this live stream, it tells me that things are not going to stay the same. And people are looking for something that's a bit more. Okay, so let's get back into our PowerPoint presentation. And there's another poll. Okay, and let's do this some more. So since everybody's moving, in one word or a phrase, 3 words or less, can you tell me what's causing the Great Resignation? So can everybody just give me your answers? You can type anything, and please don't be lame, okay? Don't put swear words and stuff. So tell me what do you really think about the reason? Why are people leaving and why are people moving away? Why is that? I can see the comments. People are saying it's a very unhappy crowd. Oh dear, yes, you're right. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, and guys, let's see what's come up. Okay, I see unsatisfaction. Life. Okay, life is causing people the great resignation. Oh, okay, and what else? What else do y'all see? Okay, yes. So not meaningful. Okay, politics, that you're not being appreciated. Okay, what else is coming up? Okay, the new priorities. Yes, work is meaningless. Oh, look at that. Okay, so there's people looking for an awakening. The people are burnt out. Oh, wow. These people are disillusioned. Okay, what has the company done to you now? The people want freedom. Okay, interesting. Okay, somebody said internet. Okay, you're leaving because of the internet. Like, why? People are tired. Okay, there's unfairness. What else do I see? Let's see. Bad boss. Oh, dear. Okay, working for KPIs. That's quite sian, right? Okay, the fulfillment, you want to do different things, losing interest and passion. Oh, okay. Now, you start to see it. I love this too. I don't know about you guys, but I love this, right? You can see the words that are really stepping out right now. Okay, I see burnout is huge. Stress, freedom, wanting change. This idea of that meaningless. Can you see how many times meaning has come up? Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Wow, wrung like a towel. Like they're just trying to squeeze everything out of you, isn't it? Oh, mental health. Wow, look at that. Yeah, Rain, you are absolutely right. There's a lot of very unhappy people here. Okay, so let's go on, and I have one more question. Okay, so let's go on to the next question. And you can see at Slido. Okay, what is one word that describes what people actually want? So we had the unhappy thing. Let's have the happy face now. What do people actually want in 2022? Okay, so can you respond? Okay, what do people want from your careers nowadays? So I mean, if you're tired, if you're burnt out, then what do you want? You want more holidays, or or like you want more beanbags in your office? You want like high class coffee in your pantries, or what is it? Or it's like you want like, I don't know, like a adjustable gaming chair. Oh, okay, look at it. Like people are not interested at all in the material things. It's not high class coffee apparently. Okay, people want appreciation. They want happiness, satisfaction. Oh wow, look at it. Oof. They want creativity, achievement, no career tracking. Oh dear. Okay, guys, we're looking for happy words. You people are putting like restless. Guys, happy words. Happy words. What do you want? So don't tell me what you don't want. That one is the previous one already. Okay, good. Oh, okay, I'm seeing the words fulfillment, appreciation, purpose. Wow, contribution. Interesting. Wow. Look at it. Okay, passion. I see some of these words coming. Flexibility. So those of you here who are leaders, and if you are a business owner, if you are watching this, I really think you should take a screenshot of this, like seriously, because it tells me that if your company is not doing those things, if you're not offering those things to your team members, that's why they're leaving, really. And think about how our Earth era systems have never prepared for these things. It's not, we think like by throwing dollars at people and somehow you can just make them do whatever you ask them to do. Because I see fulfillment, purpose, flexibility, growth, none of those things are very happening in our Earth era thing. Okay, so guys, can we get back to our PowerPoint slide? So I'm very relieved, by the way, because if people kept telling me like they just want millions, then okay, I will close shop already. It's like, I don't think I'm getting anywhere already. Okay, so I actually went and in my research, I found some of these articles which I thought had very interesting ideas. Because it says here, whether you look at a screen all day or sell other underpaid people goods that they can't afford, more and more work feels very pointless and even socially damaging. And in fact, David Graeber has called it bullshit jobs. So among others, he condemned people like private equity CEOs, lobbyists, PR researchers, telemarketers, bailiffs, and what he calls ancillary industries like dog washers, pizza delivery. They only exist because everyone else is spending all of their time working. And on top of that, now this is a bit long, but please bear with me. I'll read it because I thought this was amazing. Okay, so he said that, for instance, in our society, there seems a general rule that the more obviously your work benefits other people, the less you are likely to be paid for it. So an objective measure is hard to find, But one easy way to get a sense is to ask, what would happen if this entire class of people were to simply disappear? So you can say what you like about nurses, garbage collectors, or mechanics, and it's obvious that were they to vanish in a puff of smoke, the results would be immediate and catastrophic. Now, a world without teachers or dock workers would soon be in trouble, and even one without science fiction writers or ska musicians would clearly be a lesser place. But it's not entirely clear how humanity is going to suffer if all the private equity CEOs disappeared, lobbyists, PR researchers, actuaries, telemarketers, bailiffs, or legal consultants to similarly vanish. In fact, some people suspect it would improve the world if they actually disappeared. So apart from a handful of well-touted exceptions, which to me, doctors belong in the category of obviously benefiting society, okay, but the rule holds surprisingly well. And I think that became the case. So I think even in the pandemic years, I don't know if you all remember, there were all this talk about who was essential jobs, and then all these people getting very upset about not being essential. But I think it's pretty interesting, isn't it, that it was so stuck at that moment that the people who were the cleaners and the people who were the medical workers, and once the general public found out how little those people were being paid. And I think in the Earth era, that's what happened, wasn't it? It's like it was disproportionate. And in fact, the people who make the most money in the world are often the people who do the least for society. And you're going to see that anger that comes up, and it's not just me and it's not just you. If you just go online and look at what people are saying, that anger is switching it the other way around. So that means if you want to talk about relevance, like people keep asking, how do I be relevant in the era? This relevance requires you to understand that social benefit, what you do that influences society, is the one criteria that makes you continue to be relevant in this upcoming world. So I want to poll everybody. Okay, so let's do one more question here, where I want to know what you feel about social benefit in your career right now. So can you go scan that QR code and tell me, where do you stand right now? Like, because some of you said, quite a lot of you said you've done your Great Resignation, right? So are you currently right now in a company that has a social benefit at its forefront, at its goal? Or are we really looking at companies, or are you even like working in a company that's actively causing social harm to people? And I know at least some of my students have come to tell me that, yeah, I feel like I'm working in a company that's actually causing harm to our customers. Okay, so let's see that, okay? Or how many of you are motivated enough to feel that now is the time that I want to start my own outfit? I'm sick and tired of things that are not being addressed in the world. And if it means I've started myself, that's cool. Okay, so I'm looking at the results now, and I see that, okay, it seems like the one with the highest number of people the organization is making some real effort, which is great, okay? But we feel like we need to do more. And now I'm seeing that now more people are saying that, okay, the organization says we are changing the world, but I think it's bullshit. Like they are just putting in social causes because it's good for profit, okay? Yes, and some people have plans to start their own gig. Okay, so there's hope in the era. And let's see what else is coming up. Okay. At least I don't see people actively saying that my company is actually causing harm. Okay, so can we scroll down and see what else is there? Okay, so good. Like there are people who are already in companies where you feel that we are doing good stuff. Okay, that's cool. So there are people who don't give a damn as long as they get paid if they're being honest. And thank you for being honest. And luckily, so the people right at the bottom, the social harm one, luckily not very many. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, good. So can we scroll all the way back up and let's see, we've got 50 responses already. So can we see what's right at the very top? Okay, so wow, look at that. 14% of people. Oh wait, let's go up. Okay, 20 something percent. Okay, good. So it does seem that for most of the time, we are already somewhere where we're making some kind of effort, whether it's for self-profit or it's actually doing some good. And this is great because we are all in that hybrid earth-air thing. So it's starting to be injected, and it means that some companies are taking a little bit longer to sort of change their mindset from earth to air, but it does look like it is happening. So guys, don't get upset with your organizations. It seems everyone's still making an effort. Okay, so going back to my PowerPoint slide. Okay, then the question is, if you are going to spend your 2022, 2023, and 2024, the next 3 years, being cause in the matter. That means going back to your companies and your organizations and actively changing just 1 or 2 things every month, so that in a year, we have now changed maybe 20, 30 things. And it becomes very powerful how what we can do. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys 11 things actively. Okay, so number 1 is this concept of a binding contract. And I think I remember that when I was doing a lot of these career transformation programs a couple of years ago, quite a lot of the participants who came in had a lot of complaints about the fact that they didn't have a permanent job. What they had were contracts. So these were contracts that would run out after a year or 2 years, and they felt that there wasn't that stability that came out of it. So in fact, this is in the Earth era, the idea of having a job where it is perm job, or what we know as that, it was wanted by the workers because it essentially meant that you were guaranteed a salary at the end of the month, barring the fact that you don't go and screw it up lah. But unless you were fired or you retired, the point is you could stay for as long as you wanted. So this was okay for a while until it became quite clear that for a lot of people, they started feeling stuck. So if you recall, in the past few years, people will go on Facebook or whatever and say that I feel so stuck in my job, yada, yada. But stability also means stuck, right? It means nothing is moving. So this binding contracts became, another problem was also that sometimes the contract meant that you couldn't leave, or that you were forced to work with people that you didn't like. And I don't think people had a habit of revisiting their contracts. So it's not uncommon. You work for a company 7-8 years, and the contract that binds you to the company is the same one that was signed 8 years ago. So unless you got like promoted in a very major way, or you change your work scope in a major way, most of the time your contract remains the same. So which means that we don't keep up with the times, even if circumstances have changed. So what you can start to move towards, which I know a lot of people are going to get upset about, because then they're like, then like that, no stability. So here's where I beg to differ. So in the air era, now, as you look at the contracts that you're signing with agreements that you're doing with people, think about infusing a little bit more freedom. So some people think of this as like, which means that no guarantee. Then it's like in 1 year's time, then if they don't want to continue me, then how? So one of the funny things is really weird, because I have a lot of friends who are business owners, and you maybe bring someone in like part-time, or maybe they do 1 or 2 projects for you. And sometimes you get that fellow who is so amazing that you couldn't help it that once the project was over, you go and have coffee with them and say, you know what, it was so awesome working with you that let's create another project so that we have more opportunities to keep working with each other. And if both parties are happy with that relationship, here's the damn weird thing. They are happy to do another project. And before you know it, it's been 10 projects and we are still happy to work with each other. And knowing fully well that if it doesn't work, after this project is done, I'm leaving. That if it doesn't work. So which means that as long as people continue working with each other, it means that it works. So here's the really weird thing, that if you look at all those unhappiness, all those burnout, tired, unappreciated, how come these people didn't move on? Because they are bound by this terrible, stable contract. So this is why freedom, I put the fist bump here, right? Which means that at any time, if we are going to say, if right now I did a project for you, and maybe you've come to me and say, can we do another one? Because I really like working with you. And I could be honest with you and I could say that, I like working with you, but there was this 2 or 3 things that happened, which I thought wasn't great. And if we are going to continue, we need to address those 2 or 3 things. And if you wanted to work with me, you would be willing to address those things. So that's how people can be actively, if you can call it a negotiation or you can call it a discussion, but you need to be expressing what it is that you want out of your contracts. And this can only happen when we don't have binding, stuck contracts. So these can be shorter, and it means that the contracts are not one way. Have you noticed that most of the time the contract is written by the company, and then they get to set the terms and conditions, and then you basically get to decide whether you suck it up or you don't take the project. So that it's not going to fly with your average millennial and Gen Z anymore. So now this works a lot better. Okay, so guys, think about it. And I know some people are thinking but then I'm an employee, I work in a company, I don't get a say over these contracts. So as I always say, it's a lot easier when you set up your own teams. And I think even as an employee, you can put these things out informally within your team, such that people really only take on projects and do work when there's a freedom agreement that we have sat down and we've decided what we are going to do and how we're going to do it. And if you're not happy with this, then you don't get involved with the project, which makes people a lot happier. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, then let's go on to number two, which is the concept of structure and size. During the Earth era, it was a bit shocking for some people because last time it used to be like a cottage industry. So maybe you only get like 15, 20 people like making cloth, right? And suddenly you will go and work for a company and the factory is humongous and there are like 2,000 people there doing the exact same thing. So the idea was that you wanted to build your company as big as possible because economies of scale. That means the more people, the more towels you get to wring, then they can produce more things. So another thing is once you have like 2,000 people, hundreds of people working in an organization, what we created was this concept of a structure, an organization structure. So all of you have seen stuff like this. The bigger the company, the more convoluted the structure is. And because there has to be a way to organize all these people, and then we created this Earth era idea of a hierarchy. And this kind of thing never used to exist in the past. They existed in some ways. As long as there's a lot of people, this kind of hierarchy shows up. Now, the problem with the hierarchies is that, okay, let's talk about the good stuff first. Last time, people used to like these things because it gave you a career progression chart. You knew that as a fresh graduate, if you join the company, maybe you start at the bottom, entry level. But there was a good sense of, okay, in 2 years' time, maybe I'll be a junior manager. And then later on, if I meet certain criteria, I might become a full-fledged manager or a senior manager and so on and so forth. So that it gave people some sense of predictability and what to expect or what I need to do in order to level up. Now, the problem was that this structure became, a lot of people get upset with this because then they feel it's not fair or that it takes a long time or I slog my life out for the company and I'm still at this level. And another problem with the size of it was that you didn't get to meet 99% of the people who work for the company. You maybe only have relationships with the immediate people you work with, and it created a lot of all these misunderstandings between people, and there are a lot of internal fights. And I have had so many people come to my classes to tell me that even just the emails that are being sent internally, it is toxic. It is bad. And it's like we're not even fighting like angry customers. We are fighting like angry internal people. So that becomes not so great. And like I said, it becomes that binding structure that we are all stuck inside. So what I'm proposing in the Air era, as with this idea of a partnership, is that how you even organize and structure your teams is partnership based. So what I'm about to share with you is a diagram that I shared before in one of my earlier webinars, and it's a real life story, and it begins with me in the center. So when we started this series of webinars, all the while I really only had like one official employee. Okay, and this was Jeremy. Jeremy works for 𝗟𝗶𝗁gy. So it's just a two-man team. But when we wanted to take our things online to build webinars that could potentially hold like thousands of people, it meant that we needed to change the way we thought about things. And it meant that I had to stop thinking of myself as being like the boss person. So once you see it as a partnership, so my role is that I am the astro girl. I basically do everything that's astrology because kind of like no one else knows this stuff. But then Jeremy became the money guy, the one who makes sure the budget is all done. And I call him the oh no, my file got stuck guy because I'm quite useless with all these things. And Jeremy is my hero every single time. But we also learned to build partnerships with others. So 𝗟𝗏𝘁'𝘀 at the time, it was a friend who he is very talented with a lot of this design stuff. And I call him the make it look nice guy. So at the time, my PowerPoint slides were very pretty and 𝗟𝗏𝘁'𝘀 had a big hand in it. We also work with 𝗟𝗲𝗁𝘁. He happens to be my husband, but he runs his own video company. And we were producing so many videos and we needed the setup, the structure. And neither me nor Jeremy knew very much about cameras. So we struck a partnership with him. And that partnership is still going. I'm talking to cameras and lights around me that is all set up by 𝗟𝗲𝗁𝘁. So I call him the video guy. And then later on, we started working with Aaron, who was the getting people to click because we needed people to know that we were doing this stuff. So Aaron built that for us. So the thing is, when we look at an organization like this, so it is a purpose-built, project-based organization. And the funny thing is, with the exception of Jeremy, everybody else here runs their own company. So they were not my employees, and there was no binding contract between me and them. It was essentially, here's what I need and can you help me? And he says, okay, here's what I'm willing to do. And we got it done. So 5 people, so this was the team that put together my 2020 webinars. So we've made changes to the team along the way because that's how 𝗟𝗻 works. But a very small team of 5 buggers like us put together a series of webinars that eventually went out to a 5-figure number of people across 26 countries. And the thing is, if you really think about, I'm asking most of you who feel very stuck working in the huge hierarchies, that you always think that you're going to need like a few hundred people to get a simple thing like that done. And I don't think that's the case. So we started working with some of our students who had a taste of what it was like to work with a team like this. And my student works for an MNC in a marketing capacity. And she told us that where she's working, building just to produce one video, a rough cut, can take like weeks. And the rough cut is really a rough cut. And she's never seen a small team of people like that put together a video in like just 3 or 4 days. And the rough cut is like ready to go on social media already. So it's I'm suggesting that in the 𝗟𝗻, the smaller team is more agile. It is it gets, frankly, stuff moving a lot faster, and they cost a lot less, and it's much happier because we get to know everyone within the team and everyone agrees to what we are doing tomorrow. Okay, so something to think about. That's number 2. Structure and size. Most companies are going to downsize anyway. If you go and read newspaper, all companies are intending to downsize. So the number of people are going to go down, but I'm talking about from this many people to like 4 or 5 people. That's what I'm talking about. And that is when it's that sweet spot where people get stuff moving like instant and fast. Okay. So the next thing, number 3, is we need to change our idea about this thing called problem solving. And some people would say, you know, May, problem solving is not new. Isn't that what all companies do? And I would say that it's a different kind of problem solving. Okay, so that in companies, you've heard of people saying things like, we are fighting fires. Fighting fires. And what do we mean by fighting fires? It's like, oh, you know, the waiter didn't show up. Then after, during meeting, everyone gathers and they go like, how do we make all our waiters show up on time? Or it could be that problem solving could be, I don't know, it's like, it's just people not agreeing with each other, or they're just being inefficient, or our product, maybe if you're a farmer, maybe you farm potatoes, and it turns out that there are a lot of insects that are killing your crop. So this is what we call in-the-box problem solving. Now, most of the time, in-the-box problem solving is the type of thing that affects the bottom line, which means that we start to incur additional costs because some people screwed up, or maybe we are not doing things in an efficient way. So the in-the-box problem solving means we have a potato production company. How do we produce more potatoes? How do we produce bigger potatoes? If the idea is bigger, faster, cheaper, that is 𝗟𝗻 problem solving. Now, this kind of problem solving is happy for the boss because it's good for bottom line. But it's very sian for a lot of the people who work in the organization, because it's that whole idea of like, you're just trying to squeeze like a bit here and a bit there. And that's kind of like where the stress comes from. Because even if you are successful at solving that problem, it doesn't make you feel that sense of achievement, like you've done something really good. It's more like we've just squeezed our vendors here for a little bit more. So this is the in-the-box problem solving. As you can probably guess, in the 𝗟𝗻, we are now looking for out-of-the-box problem solving. Now, you can still be in potato production and solve all the soil problems, insect problems, and like the people never show up for work problems by doing this. So it's when we talk about this out-of-the-box problem solving, is when people start to question, so why do we need the waiters in the first place? So when you find a way to do this without the waiters, it means that it doesn't actually matter whether they show up on time or they just don't bother to show up. That's fine. Or if you talk about like the insect problem, it's about getting to the even more base level of questioning, why are we even doing this in the soil anyway? Because if people are asking about, say, climate change, then now we have to put in all these weird things to combat the climate change. How about we don't have to work with the soil? So this is where some people get a bit kanchong, or you get very anxious because you're worried now. It's like, does this mean that my job becomes defunct? Because if you are that waiter who never shows up on time, quite sure that you're going to be defunct like tomorrow. But the thing about this kind of problem solving is the fact that we are think about how, as an employee, if you actually are going to build a solution like that, at the end of the day, we know that we have solved the problem once and for all. Because if you look at in-the-box problem solving, today we managed to get the waiters to show up on time. Now, at some point, some bugger's not going to show up on time. And then the problem happens again. Then the angry emails will show up again. So it's that whole sense of we're not moving on. We keep going around in circles and talking about the same problem. Okay, so out-of-the-box problem solving is number 3. Everyone good? Okay, so let's look at number 4, yeah? I took a long time to come up with this stuff, so I hope you all like really get some value out of this, okay? Okay, number 4 is a tough one, okay? So when we talk about words like salary, and I want to tell you something, you know, just now when I was answering the question about the bank, and I said that anything that comes up during the Earth era will die when the Earth era ends, right? Like money-making Olympics, right? But the thing about salary, right, is that it's actually a very Earth era kind of concept. Now, it's not that people weren't paid in the past. They were, as in you would pay the craftsmen, and the craftsmen would have apprentices and they would pay. But in those days, it wasn't like you had a contract where the boss had to pay you like 4,000 pounds or whatever. Okay, 4,000 pounds is a lot of money, but that you wouldn't get like, say, 40 pounds if you work for this blacksmith. It wasn't like that. Most of the time, people were paid in various different ways. Like there's such thing as apprenticeships where people learn a skill, or that you would live with the master blacksmith. So your living was taken care of. You were maybe given a bit of money to send home to your family so that they wouldn't starve when you were learning a trade. But people were always being paid. But I think this concept of the Earth era salary, where at the end of the month you get these X dollars, is a very, very old concept. And I think nowadays, where people are much more open to very varying forms of valuing and paying people. And I think also, based on what we saw just now with all that unhappiness that people were getting, like unappreciated, underpaid, because a lot of times this fixed salary model it had a good idea. So let me show you. Now, in the Earth era, most of the time, salary was determined by education, status, and experience. If you were a graduate, you earn this amount. You can easily go and search for models where, okay, if you went to a vocational institute, is this. If you didn't go to school, then basically you're the lowest paid person. If you have an MBA, you're the highest paid person. And also things like status. If you move from one job to another, if you were a manager, if you were at managerial level, so you can see like all these Earth era words, right? Or if you're at director level, then director level salary is from here onwards, upwards, that kind of languaging. Or it could be based on experience. Like if you have 10 years experience versus if you only have 6 months experience, you are paid accordingly. Now, the thing is, this didn't come from a bad place. I think most of us agree that if you have studied something longer, or if you have worked with something longer, or if you have attained a certain level of achievement in your career, we would assume that this person would be able to deliver more than the person who had less. So I'm not saying that this is a broken system. But the problem is that I don't know if you all agree with me. Please show some response. Yeah, so just so that I'm not alone in this. That I think a lot of people start to realize that the MBA person wasn't necessarily creating a bigger impact than the person who came from a polytechnic. Like, who agrees with this? Right? In reality, it didn't always work, and I think it also created another problem where you see if you agree with me. That there is a magic line at which you kind of want to achieve that minimum standard. So there is a certain amount of education that you wanted, and you wanted to make sure that you rise yourself up to a certain level of status and a certain level of experience. And people will say things like, oh, I have arrived. You are successful. So you've reached that minimum that senior manager level where you are earning like that between $5,000 to $8,000, and you're like, yes, I've arrived, right? And the funny thing is, from that moment on, the motivation to continue contributing, I'm not saying that there aren't people who won't contribute, but that motivation has shifted somewhat. And the whole idea is to get to that level of that comfort zone. So, and it also meant that's why if you interview real teams, there are people who say like, yeah, my boss is, so what does your boss do? And they go like play golf or shopping for a new car. So that there are cases where sometimes the incentive is not so strong. So that what I'm noticing and proposing that we can even start to relook, especially those of us who are leaders of our organizations, and it's something I've personally started looking at also, is instead of paying people specifically by education, status, and experience, And this is tied in with the freedom contract. Now, at the beginning, in order to respect somebody based on what they've done, obviously they start with maybe higher than someone with less experience. But as we move on, as contracts get renegotiated and we start to move our projects along, here's what we can explore. The concept of an impact salary. That means people actually get paid according to the impact that they are delivering. And this is not necessarily a monetary impact. Like in the past, you saw this in the Earth era, where salespeople, if you sold more things and you had a higher profit margin, you got paid more in commissions by the company. So you find that the average salesperson has already been getting impact salary since the beginning of time. But the impact, they were only measured based on the financial impact that they were delivering. And I think as companies start to change your objectives, your end goals, as they become less and less 𝗥𝗍 focused, right? That you might actually start to appreciate that HR person who is making people be more listened to. And that how then do you measure impact? Then that's also where, I mean, these are very theoretical, right? But a company needs to start thinking about who are the stakeholders who are affected by this person's job. So if it means that this person doesn't face the end consumer, but they are really supporting the team. So they may not be the engineer per se, but they are the counseling team that makes sure that the engineers are not burnt out and they are not tired. Now, if all the engineers feedback and say that this person is amazing, like I was not in a good place, I spoke to her for like half an hour and she totally changed my perspective on how the project was going, and I want to thank her for the fact that I didn't commit suicide at the time. You know, and that's a major impact. Now, is that person being rewarded then? And what kind of can we change the way that we are incentivizing people to get the objectives that we want, which may not be monetary in nature? So it's like, that doesn't mean that a manager, a very experienced, high status manager, cannot be earning that same amount. So what this means is, like, let me go back to the previous slide. Let's just say you belong in this category. You already earned your accolades and you're there. You're in your 40s, in your 50s, you've gotten there. And the thing is, you shouldn't be worried by this. So that means if you are continuing to create a fantastic impact in your company, nobody's going to begrudge the fact that somebody is paid more than everyone else. Now, it only becomes a problem if this impact pay is only a problem when a person is not producing impact. And in a way, I'm suggesting that there's a bit of fairness here. So even for some of the business owners I've been speaking to, everybody's becoming a lot more open to this idea of, like, you know, you sort of split things out. And right now there's a lot of software, so it's very easy to do and it's very automated. You can create your own formulas and algorithms for getting the team together to decide what is important to us. And if to say that someone has done a good job, what does it really mean? And we find ways among ourselves to measure how much we have appreciated what this person has contributed. And I think it's an amazing way to think of salary. And I think it also means that some people are actually going to earn more and some people are going to earn less, and just on different metrics. Okay, so think about that. That's number 4, salary. 2022 can be very different if we allow it to be very different. Okay, now number 5 is what I call relationships. And I think workplace relationships are super important. I think people are saying that we spend more time with our colleagues than with our own friends. And this is true for the overworked generation for the last 20 years. And I think when we think of workplace relationships, going back to what I said about the hierarchies earlier, so we have a rank-based relationship where there is an understood thing that there is a distance between people of a higher rank and those of a lower rank. And this needs to be, it creates a problem, because I've had people saying that I was in a great team, I felt like I was working with people that I really love. And then after that, it was like, then I got promoted. So I became the manager. And last time it used to be that we go for lunch together, and now I've realized that my colleagues don't really want to have lunch with me because they want to say things that they didn't think I was going to hear. So just by promoting somebody, you can kill off all their friendships. And this is a real story that happens in real companies. So the problem with this kind of rank-based thing is that it's very hard for people to be real or to genuinely feedback stories. And now we have cases where people actively avoid the boss just because that person occupies a specific role. And it creates a lot of opaqueness. There's no transparency within companies. Now, if you agree with this, can I have some reaction? Because I think that's what a lot of people are very, very unhappy about in their jobs. And I'm just going to propose that how can that relationship change? And I think that once we start to see teams as being partnerships, then it means that even if you are the person you are the highest paid person and you have the most experience, it can mean that it's a role-based relationship. So I found these pictures off the internet. If in case you don't recognize him, it has Elon Musk in these pictures. In my research, I looked at a lot of the interviews that has gone on with the people that he actually works with. So of course there are the marketing pictures, the ones where the press shows up, and of course he's in a nice suit and he's standing on stage and he gets to be on top where everybody's at the bottom. But day on day, in fact, he himself has said multiple times in interviews that a lot of people think that I spend all my time being in front of a camera and being the boss. And he says, actually, no, I actually spend most of my time, every moment that I have, I'm on the factory floor. I'm in the meetings. I want to hear what the engineers are saying. And these pictures, as you can see, the resolution is crappy because these are not the official pictures that were taken by the press. These are the on-the-ball pictures. And what you can see here is now, had you not recognized his face, if you didn't know that this was Elon Musk, he looks like just one of them. He looks like just one of the engineers. And it is true that when they propose something, who is the one who has the power to say yes or no? Of course, it's Elon Musk. But the point is that he understands that my role is to make sure that the objective is being met. And that at no point is there that feeling that you can't be direct with him. In fact, he said multiple times that almost anyone in his company can give that kind of feedback to him. And he does know what's happening at all times within the organization. So I mean, he's not Jesus Christ and he's not perfect. But what I'm saying is that we can pick on some of the lessons from here. That if the richest man in the world can be one of the guys, I'm not really sure why the rest of us middle management and small little bosses can't do the same. And I think in terms of what we are able to create and to have our pulse on what's going on, it needs to be role-based. And I think it's very powerful when you put your team together and you see what does each person do. And to actually write it out with the team, and so that you can see exactly what each person contributes to the team. It's a great exercise. I've done it with my team, and I think it's really changed the way we work. Okay, so that's number 5. Change the relationships in your company. And for the people who say that, yeah, but I belong in this MNC where everybody's like kowtowing to the boss, and I would suggest that if you are a mini leader, that means you are just a team leader, you might only have 3 or 4 people reporting to you. It is true that you might be expected to kowtow to your boss, but then we can start to change things by not expecting your team to be kowtowing to you. That means we change things from the ground up. And I like to think that if the guys up there don't know how to teach the lower people how to do things, let's make it the other way around. Okay, so that's just one way we can look at it. Okay, relationships in year 2022. Ready for number 6? Okay, so number 6. Oh, wait, before I get there. So I got this off the World Economic Forum. We talk about managers, right? Under the 85 million jobs that they think is going to decrease in job demand, look at number 6. Now, number 6 says business services and admin managers. Okay, so what the World Economic Forum is saying that the companies are going to start dropping all these admin managers who essentially may not be contributing directly to the work, especially if people start to take more control, take more ownership of what they are doing. Let the team decide, and they don't really need a manager to tell them what to do. There's also like general and operations managers. At one point, I was a general manager in a company when I still had a job. And yeah, it's like, had I remained there, I'm like on my way out already, you see. So that's why for those of us who are in managerial positions, it's really to consider that your role has to change. And it has to be a lot more than just bossing people around really. It's the truth, okay? So next one, number 6. Okay, number 6 is the concept of the work outcome. So when we show up at work, Monday to Fridays or whatever time you work, some people work 24/7 nowadays. At the end of the week, at the end of the month, what do you actually produce? What comes out of you during that period? And I think in the Earth era, we tended to measure that by how many reports you write, how many coffees you make, if you're a Starbucks barista, for example. And I think that kind of work outcome is making people feel like, you know, the rat that's in the wheel, right? You just keep going round and round doing the same bloody thing like month on month. So when we look at in the Earth era, I called it business as usual. That means somebody created a business with a nice machine that works, and it's designed to eat, sleep, work, and repeat. And this is something that we all understand. If you look at the left-hand side, right, is this concept of a business open Monday to Friday from what time to what time. And this is where the working hours came from. You were expected to simply show up and repeat that grinding thing for days, day after day, with not much change to your routine. And I think the problem with the business as usual was that it didn't actually produce anything useful, and the repetitiveness is making people feel like they have no growth. Now, there is a threat that's coming up in the era now, because you see, the thing is, if you understand how programming works, right, if you can formularize it, if there's basically a step 1 to step 10, that every time you do step 1 to step 10, you produce the same outcome, here's what's going to happen. There will be a robot. There will be an automated software that can do exactly that thing. So if you talk about the barista who makes your coffee at Starbucks, somebody's already made a machine that can make every kind of coffee. So the thing is, once it gets mass produced, the barista is gone, right? And basically that machine never shows up late for work, ever. And then if you think about those of us who do paperwork, if you are a form filler, and yes, maybe the cases are different, the customers are different, but if a computer can be trained to know, in such a case, fill in this way, in such a case, fill in this way, basically your job's gone. So in a sense, in the era, business as usual jobs will disappear because it is much more efficient to have a software or a machine do the job for us. So if your job is like that, right, you have to face the music, your job is gone. Okay, but then what then will jobs look like in the era? And if you recall, when I talked about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the word creative came up. And that's exactly what it is. That people need to feel like they are building an outcome. That means this thing doesn't exist yet. So instead of having robots take over our jobs, what we do is we create that robot. We create, I don't mean you go and create a robot per se, but you are building something there. So when you have a team of 4 or 5 people coming together, whether they're out there filming or you're getting around a table, deciding, okay, if we are going to build this new baby product, what's it going to look like? What's it supposed to do? What kind of objectives do we want to change in the world? And when people come together and everyone gets a say about what it looks like, or who the target audience is, or how we are going to send this message out to people. So when people are doing that, now here's the weird thing. These people can work way harder than the people who are doing the grind stuff. If you're grinding, you're watching the clock. At 6 p.m., you're like, okay, guys, I'm out of here. But with these guys who are building outcomes, suddenly the irregularity of your work hours becomes the norm. That means it's like if we need a video, we'll get the video done. If we kind of need to contact the designer and make sure that the color is exactly right, we'll get it done. Because we are invested in the outcome. And at the end of a project, you can actually, everybody can gather and say, hey, look at what we have developed. We have produced something. But I think if you are a grinding type person, it's like, oh, this month I processed another 15,000 cases. Then last month I made like 400 coffees. Then next month again another 400 coffees. It's like, of course you have no growth. I saw growth being one of the problems there. So if people are going to grow, they must develop outcomes. Okay, so whether they are filming documentaries or whatever it is. Okay, so guys, I mean, this one is a bit tougher. And I think those of you who are in very, very small organizations can start to think of this. That means if you're a chef, is it your job to just show up at the restaurant from 7:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. just to cook for people? Or is the chef involved in evolving the menu? Who better to ask than to ask the chef, like, do you think you could develop a healthier menu for diabetic people? Maybe we want to give an option for diabetic people to still have affordable meals that allow them to eat. And then the chef can do his research and he say, okay, I've come up with 4 or 5 recipes. We can launch these 4 first. And then when he's cooking the actual recipes, or better still, building a robot that builds those recipes, they are his recipes. And I think that there's something very magic in that. And that chef is more likely to stay, more likely to work harder and to rate his job higher than to sit there and cook the same stupid thing for years and months on end. Okay, so I'm not sure if you all agree with this. If you do, show me some reaction, okay? Just so that I know that people are actively thinking about all the people on your team, who is doing the shit grunt work and who is doing the creative work. And you can see the difference between the happiness levels. Okay, now number 7, we have 11, I got number 7. Ooh, I hope I finish on time. Okay, number 7 is how we think about performance, whether you are doing a good job or not. And in the Earth era, let's look at this. Oh, the performance appraisal form. Oh my God. All my students, my clients, they are terrified of this because it means that there's an authority figure who ticks off whether you have met expectations, does not meet expectations. Everyone is terrified of this. And it's based on a very fixed work scope. Whether or not, and in fact, this kind of performance appraisal doesn't have a good outcome out of it. The best case scenario is you didn't screw up. Literally, the best case scenario is you didn't screw up. And any kind of screw ups along the way are being monitored so that they can minus points off you. So this is how, in the Earth era, it's more like we were very in the box problem solving, which creates this problem. And all of these criteria that is listed on a performance appraisal is top down. It is boss's expectation of the employees. And the funny thing is the opposite doesn't happen. How come the employee doesn't get to performance appraisal the boss? So that becomes a very big problem. It's expectation based. So what I'm proposing that we can change about how we review whether we have done a good job or not. So again, it comes back to a team-based thing. So this picture that you see here is a review that we use in our work sprints, so that when people work up to a certain level, maybe twice, 3 times a month, the team gets together and we appraise our own performance. You get to decide what were you proud of, what did you think was a bit of a screw up and maybe we should do something about it. So it is team-based and it is self-determined. You decide, did you do a good job or not? And if you didn't, maybe and there was a problem that you noticed, even if it's with another team member, can you bring it up? So I decided to blow it up a bit in case some people are very interested in this. Now I started using this with my team, and as far as I can see, we all love this. And it means that people can be very transparent. If it turns out that maybe if I said, okay, I didn't complete my work on time, and I realized that I need more resources or I need another person to help me with this, I feel so safe to tell people I need more help. And this has occurred with the rest of the team as well. And at the end of each review, we can look back and see, hey, wow, look, here are the good stuff that came up. And we get opportunities to compliment each other on, hey, you did this thing and I thought it was very well written, like well done. And there's a lot of this. It's an environment where people feel you don't wait until the end of the year for someone to give you an award to feel like you've done a good job. That means if someone's done a good job, we want to let that person know ASAP. Okay, so this is, and it helps to keep people together and to make sure that our goals are still together. Okay, so number 7 is performance. Have you changed how you decide whether someone has done a good job in your company or not? Okay, and number 8. Okay, number 8 is things like the work scope. When somebody joins a team, like what do they actually do? And if you look at in the Earth era, what you see here is a bullet point job description, the JD. Everyone knows this. And it is fixed. So if somebody does a certain job, that's it, right? And fixed means also it's very standard. All the waiters, same thing. All the HR managers, same thing. And it's trickle down, it's top down. Who gets to decide what is being done is the boss decides. Now, in the era, now things are going to change a bit. Because let me give you some different words. Instead of the boss decide the job description, how many of you here have written job descriptions for other people before? Like really, can you show some indication? You are the one who sat there in front of a screen and then you type all the bullet points. The idea that the team gets to decide what each person does is pretty crazy. And it is based on ability and based on situation. What do we need? And maybe this person is very good with colors and shapes. Now you take care of colors and shapes. And somebody's very good with talking to the angry customer. Okay, you talk to the angry customer. That's very insane. And it's not based on a JD that's written by your boss. Now, this picture shows a bunch of people who work in the F1 race industry. They are the pit crew. So the thing is, when you look at these people numbered from 1 to 21, now the funny thing is none of them, 0, none of them actually have a job description that says the guy who changes the tire during the F1 thing. The funny thing is that they are all of them engineers and technicians and mechanics who work on that car. So during the race season, is situation based, that they come on and everybody pitches in to help that car. If you've ever watched the race, right, that thing gets changed in like 2 seconds flat. It's insane, you know? And nobody has a full-time job doing this. It's situation-based, and as part of the team, they will decide what needs to be done. And within the team, they divide it out. Who's the guy who's very good with a screwdriver? You take the screwdriver thing. Who's the guy who's very good with a positioning stuff? You position stuff. So it's so insane that you get to decide what you do, and the team gets to decide. It's an insane idea, and it makes people happier, and for them to take on the work that they choose. And so now that we talk about the team, right? And I think this part is fairly self-explanatory in the sense that in the Earth era, we all belong to what I call single function departments. That how many of you here actually belong to something like that? Can you show some reaction? Like you are from the HR department, you're from the ops department, and the people that you hang out with, the people that you have meetings with, they all from the same department. And of course, it creates all that problems where ops doesn't get along with sales and sales doesn't get along with HR or whatever it is. So that's the problem with the single function. And I think for those of us who want to move into the air era mindset, it's especially if you have done pretty much one thing all your life. And this idea of, air era feels so, like the skill sets are so wide. How do I prepare myself? So what you see in the air era is a cross-functional team. And this means that you don't have that one person who does one thing. If you look at this picture of 4 guys producing a documentary, it doesn't actually mean, right, that we couldn't really point at any one guy and say, this one is the director, this one is the film producer. It doesn't work like this in the air era. That means the team takes on, look at this, they will film, they will direct, they will produce, they will edit the video, they will cast the video, somebody goes and does the recce. Together, they are all involved in marketing and social media and copywriting and budgeting and legal and dealing with the admin, with YouTube or whatever it is. They all do it. Within 4 people, they take care of every damn thing. And sometimes they may outsource certain things when they can't handle it. But the point here is that you no longer say that I am this department. Because in the Earth era, what you got was, this thing, not my department, ask someone else to do that. 5 years later, nothing is done. Because everybody is so busy pushing stuff to each other. But when a team decides that, well, this has to be done, who's available? Then someone raises their hand and says, okay, I'm done with my stuff, I'll take it on. That's how it works. And that's the reason why air era teams move this kind of 4-man team. A 4-man team producing a documentary will produce a quality documentary much faster than a gigantic Hollywood team. Want to bet? Okay, so that's why Hollywood cannot keep up with the 4 millennial buggers who are producing documentaries much faster than they will ever do on YouTube. Okay, so this is why if you cannot see yourself in this way, you're going to have a hard time in the air era. Cannot be a one trick pony already. Okay, so number 10. Okay, so we're up to 11, yeah? Okay, number 10 is the question about skill learning. A lot of people ask this question, right? What skills do we learn in the air era? And I was very recently a speaker in a summit called Change Summit, and somebody asked me this question. And my first answer was that people think of skill learning as like you go to a portal, you sign up for a course, then you attend course for 3 or 4 days, then yes, after that, yes, I have this skill. I think that's a super old-fashioned way of thinking. So if you came to my webinar thinking that I will tell you, okay guys, all of you go and learn this skill, this is very good in the air era, you should all go and have this skill, right? I think you come to the wrong place. There are other places that you need to go where they will tell you what courses to do. But I think in the Earth era, it was very based on job function. So like, if you are the investigation team member, then XXX means you have to attend all these courses. Last time it was like this. And when I found this graphic, right, I was quite amused because I noticed that the senior manager is the one who attend the least training. Then the guy at the bottom, all the low level people, they have to attend a lot. So it also tells you, going back to my previous point, that the senior person is quite often, honestly, the person who does the least work. Okay, so that's one of the thing. And also, but I think when we change skill learning, it shouldn't be based on your job function. Because first of all, in the air era, there's no such thing as a job function. But rather as a team, you think about what is the desired outcome that we want, or what is the gap. And if right now, if I don't know this, I will go and learn it. So this video that you see here is a real video that my husband will go and watch if we need something done on one of our videos. And if he doesn't know what to do about the lens, because he doesn't know everything, right? So he watches that video and he learns. So sometimes it's an answer that you get from the internet for like 5 minutes. You don't need to go attend a lens course to know about what to do about the lens. And that's why in the air era, it's fast. You got to get it done real quick. But does it mean that then that training courses are gone? Not really, because there are things that it's much bigger. You're looking at a competency here. So when we're looking at competencies, now I myself attended this man's course. So just a few weeks ago, I attended a Scrum Master course, and it was conducted by Mr. 𝗟𝗲𝘁'𝘀𝘁. So I was in a 2-3 day course where I went through how to work in a different way. I thought it was awesome. So the thing is, but at the same time, when I went there, I wasn't interested in a certificate. I did get a certificate, but frankly, don't give a damn about the certificate. What I wanted was, can we now come back to our team and apply what it is that we needed? Now, I signed up for that course because I felt that my team wasn't 𝗟𝗻 enough. And I was the bottleneck. I was the boss that was holding a lot of people back. So I was thinking, can I go and learn a new way of working? So yeah, can it be training courses? Yes, but don't go there for the certificate. It's not a smart way of doing training anymore. Okay, so last one, number 11 is, so then what skills do I learn? What industries do I aim for? So I guess I'm going to start off by giving you the 𝗟𝗻𝗁 answer first, okay? Because, I mean, if you look at it, 2/3 of you were very interested in this skills learning in the 𝗟𝗻𝗁. Okay, so I deliver my promise, yeah? So if your concern is survival and relevance, I want to make sure that how do I survive? What is that one course that if I attend, I will be guaranteed my salary? 𝗟𝗻𝗁 answer, right? Now, the World Economic Forum has made this easy for you. They have outlined the top 10 skills. So if you wanted the 𝗟𝗻𝗁 answer, you can take your phone out and take a screenshot right now, because then you better go attend all these courses, sign up ASAP, right? And I'm not really sure how people can learn critical thinking from a 2-day course. Not sure about that. Or how people can learn leadership from a 2-day course. My experience is that's not how you learn leadership. But anyway, these are the top 10 skills. So go and learn. Or you could base it on 𝗟𝗻𝗁 style. What industries are going to be big? Which industries have the best prospects? And the World Economic Forum made it easy for you also. 97 million jobs are going to be created. Growing job demand. So you can see from the list here, data analyst, big data, digital marketing, digital transformation. Anyone surprised? So these confirm, if you go and do all these jobs, there will be plenty of demand for it. So if your concern is survival and relevance, you do all this, you confirm relevant. Okay, so you can absolutely do that. But you also know that for the vast majority of people out there who have not let go of the 𝗟𝗻𝗁 mindset, here's what's going to happen. Everybody will go and take the course. Everybody will go to that new industry. And everyone's going to queue for it. There will be super competition, and you know exactly what's going to happen. And then all the dissatisfaction, disillusion, no growth, it's all going to repeat itself. Because so what if you are in an 𝗟𝗻𝗁 job? So what if you are sitting at your laptop and then you're just producing big data analysis, yada yada. It's just that right now the work is on laptop, but not very different from the 𝗟𝗻𝗁, isn't it? So that means, so what if on the outside people are doing 𝗟𝗁, inside still 𝗟𝗻𝗁? So that becomes a very, very major problem where if you feel like you're not moving on and the things that you're doing is just another rat race, right? That's where it comes from. Okay, so that means we need to break out of that. My suggestion is don't go for where the demand is. So most people start with the society. Where are the opportunities? Then I go and squeeze myself and fit into where the jobs are demanding. I'm proposing the opposite, that you start from you. So if you are unsatisfied, disillusioned, then what kind of change do you want to see in the world? And how would you like to get involved? So if you were my team member, for example, I would ask you, so this is our goal, and what kind of work would you like to take on? So it's very weird, like the worker gets to decide what I want to do. It's a crazy idea, right? So if you look at the responses, now number 2 priority from my audience was human profiling in the 𝗟𝗻𝗁. And this is very heartening for me, because it means that people are starting to realize that you don't just go and do whatever has a high demand. You simply start from yourself. And what are some of the natural skills, the natural things that you want to do? So for me, it's like, of course, you talk about human profiling, there are lots of different ways. And obviously, if you ask me, the best is astrology, my favorite, because it really gets down to people as individuals. You're not an INTJ, or you're not like a high D, low I. It's not as simple as that. It's a very complex system. But I think what people really want to ask themselves is like, who are the people who are natural activists? And an activist doesn't mean that you go and take a picket sign and then you go and like protest on the streets. An activist can do this on YouTube. You can do this by writing articles. You can do this by being an advocate in your industry, by training people to recognize what needs to be done. But you're the guy with the loudspeaker. Hey guys, like we need to look at this problem. So who are natural activists? And if you don't get to do activism in your work, you're going to be miserable. And what's the difference between an activist and somebody who is a bit more of a threat a threat spotter? People who work in the meteorological services, who watch out for tsunamis and watch out for earthquakes. Now, those people can find meaning in their work. They look at patterns, they see something wrong, they will alert everybody. And who are the ones who are realizing that there are threats on the internet? And they do this to protect the kids. They protect businesses and people's interests. So can you find meaning in your work? Absolutely. But it really depends on how the activist and this watchman guy is a totally different profile. And also, you get people who don't want to be part of that at all. Who are the ones with the big hearts? They really are the empaths. You know, these are people who want to help the broken kittens. They want to help broken humans also to cope with life and trauma and counseling and all that stuff. So the thing is, how most people don't even have a basic understanding of their own profiling. And I think we've all been squeezed into that box where we are all the same. It's just copy and paste. Such that this idea of starting from you and what is natural for you, and that you could be happy and very good at what you do, is a complete topic that nobody's really talked about. And this is why, I mean, rather than me telling you this theoretically, and I think I want to show you the real life examples where this has actually happened. And if you are going to make your plans in 2022, maybe some of these people can show you what is possible. And some of these people achieved it in their little transformation from employee to whatever they are doing in a year, 2 years, some even less. So I'm going to show you 6 real people, real profiles, and real careers. And I've asked all 6 of them, and they've been happy to allow me to show you their astrological charts. And I'm going to show this. Okay, so my first example is Miss 𝗟𝗲𝘁. She was recently featured on Channel News Asia because she has ADHD. But the thing is, she was born in those years where people don't know much about all these learning disorders. So for her, this article covered her experience, but what I thought the article didn't cover a lot of was what 𝗟𝗲𝘁 was doing for other people who had ADHD. So having gone through the difficulties herself, she's now offering the kind of coaching for the youngsters. So this is 𝗟𝗲𝘁's chart. And I know most of you don't read astrology, so I'll tell you what I see from the chart. Now, first of all, what she discovered in class was that her natural work was to coach people on a one-on-one thing. And she also had to understand who her natural audience was. She's not going to be effective coaching everyone. There's a specific group of people who are young, they're entrepreneurial. But the thing is, because of the ADHD issues, there's a lot of these self-value issues. They don't feel like they fit in with most people. And there are problems dealing with acceptance by other people. And she understands that because she's been through it as an ADHD person. So her dominant personality is very relationship oriented. And in fact, her relationship is not the YouTube kind. Her relationship is a one-on-one kind of situation. So she went and designed her entire career around it. Now today, 𝗟𝗲𝘁, when I first got to know 𝗟𝗲𝘁, she had just come out of a civil service job. And she liked to tell people that I was neither civil nor servant. And she absolutely did not fit into the civil service at all. But today, what she does is coaching a lot of these youngsters. They have trouble fitting it at work. A lot of these are at school also. They are sometimes 16, 17 years old. But a lot of these kids already have their own businesses. So there's a very specific group of people. And she's teaching them how to connect with people, how to make practical decisions, and it's been amazing. In fact, I have asked her for her handles, like her IG and Telegram and whatever. And seriously, I mean, she's really, really good at this. She also helps business owners to deal with hyper tensions in their company when they have mutinies and crises within the company. She's very good at easing the relationships. And I thought, I'm amazed at what she's managed to accomplish in 2 years or less. So her top profiles, so that's my tool that I use. Her top profiles are the curator and the transactor. So her real specialty is in looking at people's value. And she's done a fantastic job building a career about that. Okay. So I want to feature another person. His name is Joel Loh. And when Joel first came into our class, like he was in a space where he was a bit confused about where the next direction was. Joel had been involved in productions. He's an actor. But I think at the time when he showed up, he had a lot of problems with articulating some problems. Like he would be on set and he wouldn't agree with certain things. And it's very hard to find a way to explain to the authority figure why I don't agree, or there are a lot of miscommunications. So when he first came in, one of the things that he discovered from his chart was that he didn't have a voice and he struggled with that. And what he realized was that perhaps his real career was in helping the people who didn't have a voice, and he showed them how to use the voice. Joel has a trained voice. He's an actor and he's a singer. So with all that training, instead of training people to be like Singapore's top idol, he was training corporate people how to speak up, how to be confident, to sing songs and to be confident with the sound of your voice so that you can speak up in the workplace. And it's turned out to be a lot more than just a singing class. It's about a confidence and a self-value class. So these are just some examples. He said, I knew I wanted to help people overcome their fear of expressing themselves freely through their voices. Who cares whether you're a good singer or not? You have to use your voice. And this is just another example of the classes that he's teaching. He might have started with very small classes, just 1 or 2 people. And now Joel has much larger classes, as you can see here. And these are not like, they're not like poor, broken people. A lot of these are professionals. They are doing well, but they're not using their voice. And from what I can see here, Joel has called his practice Unlock Your Voice. And that's great. And you can see people are open and willing to share personal struggles that they have with their voice. I hope you agree with me. This is a lot more than just a singing class. And this is Joel's chart. And he's informed me that if people, if you know yourself or anybody else who wants to get in touch with that, you can contact him directly. On Instagram, I'm Joel Low. Then but for him, his self-expression, ultimately he's a teacher. So when he came in, he was an actor, and I don't think he had his full self-expression as an actor. What he wanted to do was to teach other people. And he wanted to teach people about imagination, artistry, expression. And in fact, his greatest contribution was helping those people who are disadvantaged or overlooked or who don't have a voice. That's what he got from his chart. And that his profiles, his top profiles were the romantic for the artist, and the administrator for being able to put ideas together, and the empath for realizing that there are people who are broken and that we don't start with the hard stuff first, we start with the heart stuff first. And that's what Joel has done. His transformation, I think, what I saw was that he made this happen in a year, 2 years or less. And right now, he's been doing this for some time now. And Joel is one of the students I'm extremely proud of. Okay, so that's Joel's story. We also have Jeremy Tan. And when Jeremy Tan first came to us, he was still in school, still an NUS undergraduate. And he did say at the time that he wanted to be an astrologer and he wanted to help people with things. But it was very hard to articulate like exactly who did you want to help and how do you get good at what you do. So, but today, Jeremy Tan, he's definitely finished school for some time now. And in fact, he's embarked onto this career early part of 2021. So he's been full-time for an entire year now. And look at that website. So that clarity of purpose, knowing fully well that he specializes in trauma and purpose. So that's something that he's done fantastically. And I want to show you his chart. Okay, so and also you can get in touch with him via Instagram. His business is called Sacred Saturn, or you can visit him on his website also. But what Jeremy got from his chart was an understanding that even if you become an astrologer, your customer isn't everybody. You can't help everyone. But his specialty here was really about people who had very specific insecurities and fears about relationships. Mostly your romantic relationships. But I think he started to move into the traumas that people have with their parents, with siblings. And as long as there was a self-acceptance issues, he was helping people with that. And you know what? Jeremy Tan has been doing this full-time for an entire year. And he, at no point did he ever say that, yeah, I'm panicking and maybe I should go back to my day job. Hasn't happened. So that's why a lot of people think that if they go and pursue what it is that they really want to do, they think that they're going to starve and die. And I think what's important is to get back and see, are you doing what you are really good at? Because if you start your own practice and you starve and die, good chance that you're not very good at what you do. So that's the main thing, is to be very good first. And I think that's what Jeremy Tan had discovered about his journey also. And his dominant personality is a combination. He is a Taurus And that means he has a lot of that practicality and structure. So although he's a spiritual practitioner, like me, I'm a Taurus too, and we don't talk about all the woo-woo stuff, and we don't ask you to pray to some goddess or something, nothing like that. But it's really applying what we understand so that people can use it in a practical manner. But he has something that I don't have, which is that he has a lot more empathy and a lot more spirituality. So he's able to sit down with people who are really broken and to help them through whatever it is that they're going through. And his top profiles, his number one profile is the caretaker. And he also has the teacher. So he may not teach classes like I do, but his teaching is more of like on a coaching and a consultancy kind of basis. I think he's done a great job. I'm also extremely proud of Jeremy Tan. Okay, and we also have, now Tonya is right now in training to become a professional astrologer. And Tonya came from the banking industry. So somebody who was dealing with the operations, the back end, she understood the corporate grind. And for her, it was a real leap of faith, because how do you walk away from all that structure, knowing fully well what's to be done? And as a new entrepreneur, you have to decide what happens tomorrow. So it's that creativity in coming up with stuff. So she's gone and started with her workshops. Maybe the first few workshops, there were very few people, just like my first few workshops, just like Joel Lowe's first few workshops, and then it grows. So the right-hand side was a workshop that she did very recently, in December, just last month, to help people use the tools that she's teaching them to review and to renew their life. So in a way, she's also doing what I'm doing for you guys on the 8th of January. That means, what are the new goals that you can set for yourself after a reflection on your life? So she's doing it in her own way, and I'm proud of what Tonya has started. So you can get in touch with her. She's Tonya, the Business Alchemist. You can do that on Instagram or Facebook. These are real people, and I didn't make these people up. They're really doing it. And a lot of them, her transformation tool, I think, took, honestly, from the time she quit until now, I would say it's less than 2 years. And her purpose is to coach a lot of these high achievers. They're successful in their career, they have conventional jobs, and they're not taking that step. So while I do it in a group setting, Tonya is better on a more intimate setting, smaller workshops and smaller coaching. And she does, her natural work is to get to the root of what is the imbalance. Tonya is a very Libra person. So she understands when somebody is out of balance, and they're just simply identifying where the imbalance is, and they do practical things to address it. Tonya's top profiles are the philosopher and the genius. So for her, it's really getting to a big picture story and even dealing with people with very weird ideas, because she specializes in soulpreneurs, people who want to combine a spirituality and well-being together with their businesses. So it's some of it is like it doesn't really fit into our Earth era corporate kind of environment. So the profile, the genius, helps her to relate to some of the more crazier ideas, which may sound crazy, but really isn't at all. Okay, and I've got 2 more people to share with you. I've got Derek Chu. Now, I talk about Derek a lot. And for me, Derek, when he first came to our classes, he was a theatre producer who was very lost at the time because COVID happened. And it meant that people couldn't buy tickets, they couldn't go to a theatre. And for him, it's like, I'm in an industry where everyone is looking at each other and going like, 𝗟𝗲𝘁'𝘀, we're not going to survive this period. And so for him, when he first came in, I'll be honest with you, he was very, at first it came from a self-centered placement, because can I survive or not? How to make money during this period? But you see, once he got into his chart, he realized that the vision was bigger than that. He felt that it was an entire industry that was being threatened by the changes in the air era. So when he decided to embark onto his new projects, the purpose was not about necessarily his own survival. It was that, but also realizing that we need to show the whole industry how we can maybe do things differently. Because if we don't, we were all going to die. So he came up with a hybrid. And he thought about how can we make theatre still relevant to the young generation. And suddenly he realized interactivity, online, digital, that having people be able to determine outcomes is key to that. So he created a series of these, well, I'm not really sure what you call them. They are like hybrid theatre and gaming experiences. So people buy a ticket, they go online, they get to determine the outcome of the story, a bit like a choose your own adventure. They get to guess who's the murderer. And on top of that, a lot of it is very localized, and he got to educate people about the stories about 𝗟𝗲𝘁 Hospital, the horrors. Then he did it during the Halloween period. And then the curious case of the missing Peranakan treasure was filmed in Raffles Hotel. And so it became a heritage thing. A lot of people were very proud of the beautiful hotel that it was filmed in. It was a great story too. So, and Derek works with a team because unlike some of the other guys who started their own practice and they run as one-man show, Derek understands that when you want to do things on a larger scale, there's no way he's going to act direct and do makeup all by himself. So he's got a fantastic team. And knowing astrology also means that you get to profile everyone on that team and making sure that each person is bringing to the team what is natural for them and what makes sense for people to respect that another person may not be very good at this and maybe they need to do something else instead. So for Derek, what he discovered was that it's the natural work that he does is to manage the material resources. He's not so good at writing the story, and he's maybe not that great of an actor. He maybe not that great with makeup also, but he's very good at the production thing. So all these artists who don't know how to count money, he's the one who does the money counting. But it is done so that the production gets to continue. And also his personal purpose is that he wanted to broadcast, he wanted to promote the creative culture and also roots to get Singaporeans to realize that we live in a country with Peranakan culture and ghost culture and whatever it is. So for him, his top profiles are the teacher and the activist. So although he doesn't like teach class per se, he still does every now and then. But for him, the activism comes from the fact that we need to highlight a lot of these issues. We need to get people thinking about stuff. And I thought he's been great. I think he's the most featured person in all my webinars because I think what he's done is wow. And although he started in theatre and he's still in theatre, but that transformation, that 2-year journey, I think he's come up with something like 6 to 7 productions in that 2 years. So for people who are like sort of waiting someday, one day you're going to quit your job, well, in that 2 years, he's produced seven theatre productions. And I think, wow, and they're all digital, all hybrid. Okay, so the last example is someone on my team. Now, this is an example of someone who didn't make a career change. Jeremy still works for 𝗟𝗶𝗳𝘀, but for him, what he wanted to change was this idea of like, there's a lot of trash out there in the world. Jeremy is an Aquarius, and he's very much of a humanitarian. And he wanted to educate people about what we are doing to our natural environment. So what he did was he started a Telegram group called Kayaking Cleanups, and you can see on the right-hand side. So Jeremy goes, it started with him going kayaking, and he would bring a couple of his friends along. So 3 or 4 guys would go on, and they're not there for fun. As they're kayaking on the Singapore River, they're picking out all the trash. So I think he took a few selfies and then they posted it online. And it seemed that other people were very interested in his movement also. So he said, okay, let's start a Telegram group. And then every time he goes for a kayaking cleanup, he would post it on the Telegram chat. And the funny thing was, absolute strangers, people who don't even know who is he, they would all go sign up and they would meet him at the kayaking place. And then all these strangers would pick up trash, and after that they go eat lunch together, and then they make friends. And none of it was ever about dollars or money. There wasn't fees to be paid, there was nothing. So that was and you can see some pictures of him and all these volunteers who come out of nowhere. They're just regular Singaporean people who believe in his vision. So that's Jeremy's chart, and of course, if you'd like to be part of his kayaking cleanups, COVID is going to ease up shortly, so he will resume his kayaking cleanup soon. And if you want to be part of that, go join his Telegram group, right? And so his dominant personality is that he will take a logical, problem-solving approach. So there are all these matters of our home environment, foundations. This is natural for Jeremy. And his natural audience are people who are very humanitarian. They're very community-minded. And they are aware that there are a lot of broken situations, and we want to solve the problem. It's that simple. And then for him, his top profiles is the humanitarian and the caretaker. So this is why I think sometimes some people have a resistance to this whole astro thing because they think that it restricts you. But I think that the Earth era thing was a lot more restrictive because for a lot of these people, the profile allows you to pick and choose, to select with all your resources, how you want to spend your time and your energy. Who are the people you want to hang out with? And I tell you, I guarantee you, talk to any of these 6 people, here's what you won't hear. You won't hear disillusionment. You won't hear that they have no purpose. You won't hear that they have no fulfillment. Rubbish. None at all. And none of these people are starving to death. And it means that they may not be multi-millionaires, but they are serving people. And every day, at the end of the day, when they are completely spent from all the work that they've done, at the end of the day, there is meaning in their jobs, and they are all producing outcomes, and all those era things that I mentioned, they are all doing it. So if anyone says that it's very hard to do it right now and it's not ready yet, I call bullshit. Okay, so that means my students have done it, there's no reason why the rest of us can't. Okay, so I know I'm sort of like past time, okay, but I just want to do just this one last poll. Me having spoken like almost non-stop for 3 hours, I mean, I really want to know, what do you guys care about? Like, do you care about the theatre? Do you care about like picking up trash? Or what is that cause that draws you? Or obviously you want a meaningful job, right? Please go and scan this QR code and tell me, what is that one thing that you'd be willing to do, to work as hard as these people to make happen? And so this is a free response. You can write anything you want. And I like to see what causes come up. Okay, so let's go and look at the responses. Awesome. So what causes do people care about? I mean, is it, I don't know, is it kids? Is it the humanitarian thing? Wow, look at that. Okay, I'm seeing some coming up. Things like the recycling. I see save the earth. I see happiness. What else? Oh, to make someone's day. Okay, family. Yeah. I see individualism. Yep. Arts to bring joy to all. Isn't that nice? Right? People with special needs, just like Cheyenne. And things like mental health, psychological well-being. Look at that. Wow. Look at that. Okay, so wellness is getting a lot of attention here. The science of well-being, the environment. Look at that. Okay, equality, art galleries, getting people to showcase what it is that they have to contribute to the world. Even look at the aging population. Wow, wow, look at that. Self-expression, parenting. Is there a way to treat kids better than to have them all be fat and look at screens, right? Yeah, curbing resource users. Wow, wow. Okay, so yeah, clean drinkable water. You know, it's pretty crazy. I remember one of my students was she's a microbiologist from 𝗟𝗲𝗁𝘀 Hospital. And she came in and she said something to me. I'm a microbiologist, which means I deal with germs. And she said the biggest problem in Singapore is that it's too clean. There are no germs here. And what she discovered from doing the class was that I need to be in a place where there are germs because I'm not doing anything good here. I'm just cleaning up like a already sterilized environment. And you know, right after the course, she WhatsApped us and that she had applied to the United Nations. And she was getting herself involved in germ cleaning up projects in third world countries where the people are poor and they're malnourished and they're just not doing stuff. And she said that's what a microbiologist should be doing, not hang out in a high-class first world hospital. You know, so I think in many ways, if you just look at that list there, look at what is really jumping out at you: psychological well-being, mental health, freedom. And the fact that many people are saying the exact same thing tells you very clearly the priorities have changed. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap up. Okay, I know I'm past time, so I'm just going to just summarize. Okay, what it is that if you are going to change your idea about skill learning, human profiling, and yes, I talk a lot about career, but I think that when you get the career right, it fixes all the issues with the examples that you give to your kids. It fixes your self-esteem issues and this ability to be contributing to others. So my top tip to you is, number one, choose the project, don't choose the job. What are you working on? Who cares about the parameters of the job? Is it meaningful or not? Then also, you have to understand for yourself what roles are most comfortable for you. Don't assume that everyone is ready to be the boss. Not everybody is ready to lead a team. Some people are happier being followers. And then some people are much happier dealing with the emotional factors than with the concept factors. You have to know what's right for you, and then you design the work that you do accordingly. You also want to know how you can contribute to innovation and to social impact. So all of us put all those words on that screen just now. Well, we don't just let it be lip service. Ask yourself, sure, you want to deal with animal wellness. Then what? Are you going to be a biologist? And if you don't have biology, like a biological background, or you're not a scientist in that sense, surely they need admin people. Surely they need people to help them with social media and stuff. Like, can you still contribute to animal wellness even if you're not a doctor or a vet? So, and also to identify, are there existing abilities that you have that are currently not used because your Earth era job scope and the job description doesn't include that particular ability? You know, I had a student who came in and her job essentially deals with Excel sheets, boring, endless Excel sheets, data and analysis. And it turns out from her chart, we discovered that she is fantastic with colors and shapes. And then she said, oh, that explains why I love doing the PowerPoint presentation for our presentations at work. She doesn't like to do the presentation itself, but she liked to create the slides. And it turns out that this woman who spends all her time with Excel sheets is actually better off doing colors and shapes. How come no one noticed that? And also things like, to collaborate, you need to identify, just like 𝗟𝗏𝘁'𝘀, what are the things that you are not great at, so that you can appreciate that someone else on your team can cover up for what it is that you don't have. Because ultimately, the end game is that we get the outcome done. And if I can't do it, we need someone on the team who can do it. It's as simple as that. And number 6 is that you can still earn a fair living from your work. A lot of people think that if you choose this kind of job means that you are going to earn less. First of all, I've already established that we don't need so much anymore. In the air era, not everything is going to revolve around money. So when you don't need so much money, your choices are bigger. So you can still earn your fair living. When you do good work, you should be paid. And then you get to release yourself from the stress and the need and the comparison of needing to earn AMAT as much as possible, which is, it just doesn't make anybody happy. Okay, so that's just my summary. So I spoke for 3 hours. I tried my best to distill it down to as simple things as possible that we all can do here. And I know that during the break also, there were lots of people who got in touch with my guys who are responding to stuff. People asking questions about the courses, about my classes. So I'm just going to give a bit of information here for the people who are looking for it. And this course is the Beginner's Intro to Astrology course. And what it really does is, our aim is to bring the very complicated science of astrology down to the average regular person. That means when you look at a chart like that, which is scary for a lot of people, it makes no sense. It's like Egyptian hieroglyphics. But can we teach the basics such that you can make sense of it? So just like the other students who discovered that for some people, psychology was important. For some people, the broken people were important. Some wanted to do humanitarian, like trash picking activities. So how to tell these things? And you can do that in a very simple program. For me, it's more like, I think what is more important, I can go into all the technical things like what you're going to learn, but I think I want to establish first and foremost that when we do a course like this, we actually really care about who comes in. Because my aim is not the dollars that come out of it. My aim is to produce people just like those 6 people. So that means we've done this for a long time, for about 8 years. I'm in my 9th year teaching astrology right now. And for me, we start to realize who are the people who get the really good outcomes out of it. And I'm going to enumerate here. And honestly, if you don't belong in any of these categories, right, it's like the course is not useful for you. And I'll be very honest with you. It doesn't matter whether or not we get paid for this or not. So importantly, number 1, we are fantastic with people who are preparing for a career direction change. Because sometimes it's not that you don't know what you want to do, it's that people needed to see that validation. For a lot of my students, they kind of knew in their gut that that's something they want to do. And when they see it for themselves on the chart, and they'll ask me, does my chart really say that I'm good at this? I'm like, it absolutely does. And you know the magic that happens? The confidence rises that yes, this is absolutely correct. It's what I wanted. I've known this for years. They actually go and make a career change. Is that crazy? That assumes that you are serious about a career change. And also there are people who are preparing to venture into their own project. They're starting to maybe start their own business, start something online, or even like Jeremy, to not start a business per se, but just to have a Telegram group with kayaking cleanups. That you want to know, for example, how do you get your message out there? Who are the, I don't like to use the word target audience because it makes it feel like you're shooting and you're targeting at them. I don't like that word. But I think it's more like, if you're creating this product or service, who is it designed to benefit? So that you have to know this if you're going to start your own project. And if you are already a team leader, you could be a boss with team leaders who are struggling to cope with COVID and with the changing environment. Maybe the work scopes are not properly distributed. You are giving work to people for things that it's not natural for them. And therefore, people are giving each other a hard time. So the leaders can do that. Profile not just themselves, but you as a leader. Are you able to change your mindset into the air era thing? And if you're going to be not rank-based, but role-based, what then becomes your role if you're no longer just the manager? Okay, so that's one. And also the coaches and mentors. I think it's a rising trend of people. You saw for yourself how many people are interested in dealing with wellness and psychological well-being. I myself, I am a psychological astrologer. And over the last 17, 18 years, I've practiced as an astrologer. I've gone and explored many other different types of profiling tools. I can say with my heart, honest truth, I have not found a tool that is better than PA, or what we call psychological astrology. Nothing else has been able to get people to see the root cause of the problem and to deal with it in a very practical manner. Okay, so that's, if you're a coach or mentor, I highly recommend this. And on top of that, if you're just a team member, maybe you're not like the top guy, but I think the team members also want to get involved in, if you're going to volunteer for the kind of projects and the tasks that you want to do you yourself know what you want and what you're good at and what is natural for you? So it's just to improve your own work styles. And the last group of people are those whom I feel that if you've been studying astro by yourself online for some time, and your readings are flat and pointless and meaningless, and you're looking for a better way so that when you get into charts that you can tell a much better story, that people actually get some kind of benefit out of you sitting down with them for an hour with their astrological chart. Then if you like the way I teach, which is I teach you something and we apply it, then I like to recommend myself as a pretty decent teacher of astrology. So the thing is, it's a 2-day program, and it's suitable for people who don't have any background whatsoever. I start from the beginning. Now, even if you know a bit of astrology, most of my students who come in with experience already tell me that they learn to see the chart from a different perspective. It's like how to use it rather than, oh, I know what this means. Okay, so that means even if you know a bit of astrology, I've got people who studied for 11 years and came in and gave me 5 stars out of 5 stars for the class. Okay, so it's basic, but it is also not basic. So what we cover is that if you're coming not for others, if you're coming for yourself, that's cool too. In fact, what you learn is things like the houses, all those sectors, which areas of life are more natural for yourself. And also like your communication styles, where you can contribute the substance and where you can contribute like the shake-up. What are the areas that allow you to be a bit more of an innovator? Or if the world is going to change, then in what areas? Not everyone is good at transforming children. And some people are just much better at transforming a logistics warehouse, so that's what we look at. And also things like your elemental temperaments. Who's fire, who's earth, who's air, who's water? Like me, I am earth dominant. So just don't assume that just because a person is earth means that they cannot adopt an air era mindset. I call bullshit on that. Okay, so also what are the roles, your dominant personality, and then at the end of it, we put it all together and create a simple career profile. Okay, so that's what we do in 2 days. I love teaching this class, and that's why it is. So, later on, people who are interested in the psychological profile can go on and do that. Some of you are hoping to become professional astrologers to train like what Jeremy Tan and what Tonya is doing. Those are available later, but everyone starts with the beginner's intro astrology course. Okay, so that's how our school works. So we no longer have any more space in our classes in January. There are no slots available, but my next available classes are in February, 12 and 13, or 19 and 20. So it's a 2-day course, so don't come for both. There's only one, you have to select it. And just to make things easy, I know the picture shows me talking to a bunch of people live, but we're going to do this Zoom online because our students come from multiple countries. And it's not unusual for you to have an Indonesian classmate or even someone from the US who stay up all night just to come for class. We've had people like that as well. So if that's what you want, you get in touch with us. This QR code takes you directly to our team, and we're going to do this via WhatsApp. Okay, so then if there are questions or whatever, get to them. But there is one thing that I want to absolutely emphasize, okay? Because for us, we are not invested in having as much as possible. We are not invested in earning as much as possible. For us, the objective is still the most important. We created this school because we want to create people like those 6 people. And in fact, one of the first things that my team is going to ask you, and we don't move on unless we have this established. Because if a person cannot answer this question, right, there's a good chance that they're not really sure why they want to do this course. And if a person is looking for purpose, if that's your reason, then make sure that you begin with purpose. Don't begin with cost. And I think that's even one of the mindsets that is so prevalent, that people want to know if like, what's the cost? And in fact, I want to ask you, then what then is the cost of changing your careers? Now that cost is way higher. Now, most of the time people are interested in a short-term cost, but they're not paying enough attention to the long-term cost. So what happens is, if you get in touch with us, I'm going to have a personal request from me. Now, my guys will ask you this, and please give them a real answer. Which of these bullet points do you belong to? And for us, it's if we cannot establish that, that means we are not getting people to think about if you are going to make a change, if you're going to walk away from that salary, that box that you've been in for a long time, there will be a cost. And depending on which one of these things you are, that cost is different for each person. And we want people to realize you know exactly why you want to do this course. And then after that, we are happy to answer any kind of the logistical things. Okay, so do that. And if you're going to get in touch with my guys, here's the QR code. Tell them which of those bullet points you are. Okay, so otherwise, I'm clearly past time. It's already 1:15. And I like to thank my team, okay, because we work very hard to put out these webinars. We don't charge a cent to anybody. It's our way of making sure that we share these astrological insights with people. I'd like to wish everybody a happy 2022. It's going to be an interesting year. Go watch my November webinar and I'll tell you it's not going to be a peaceful year. But at the same time, I think that if we can take a different perspective and recognize that all the events that are going to happen in 2022 is not designed to break you. It's designed to show us that the Earth era no longer works. And if we're not ready to sort of switch that mindset into the air era, we're going to have a very hard time. And in fact, you look at those 6 people and how they've shifted. Does it mean that the events are not going to hit them? It will, but these people are so much better equipped to be able to be agile, to change direction if they need to be there to support their customers when they need to. Okay, so I'd like to thank everyone for sticking with me for 3.5 hours. Please enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys in my other videos and stuff. Okay, bye-bye.